the April the 11th, 2017 convening of the Baltimore City Board of Municipal and Zoning Appeals. Before we get underway, just a few house rules. First, if you have a cell phone, a pager, anything that makes any kind of electronically generated audible sound, plays a ringtone, a chime, etc., we ask at a minimum that you please turn those devices to a vibrate only, if not off position. Similarly, to the extent that you need to engage in a conversation with someone, we ask that you take that conversation out the double doors to your rear. And the reason for those rules is pretty simple and straightforward. You'll note that there are a number of microphones which are arrayed around us up here. Those microphones are all very sensitive. They're not only for the purpose of amplification, but they're also for the purpose of recording these proceedings. And they are very sensitive, so they can pick up cell phones, pagers, things going off in the gallery, conversations, etc., and therefore disrupt the recording of these proceedings as well as the conduct of these proceedings. Additionally, those of you who are forward of the wall or above you, if you turn around, you can see that there are 1, 2, 3 video cameras which are mounted on the wall behind you there, and there are 1, 2 video cameras which are mounted on the wall behind us up here. And those cameras are recording these proceedings as well. They're being streamed live on the website for the city's cable access network, as well as recorded for broadcast on the cable network itself, and saved to the city's YouTube channel. So cell phones, pagers, conversations, and other electronic devices also disrupt that process as well. When we call the cases, we're going to call the cases generally in the order in which they appear on the docket. And at the conclusion of the day, we will be voting on all of those cases. If you'd like, you can certainly stick around and enjoy a civics lesson if you so choose, but if you've got other plans for this otherwise splendid really fabulous early spring afternoon, that's certainly quite understandable, and you can call into the zoning board office in the morning and find out how we ruled on your case. If you take out pen and paper, I can read the number for the zoning board office a couple of times, so you can have a chance to take the number down. That number is 410-396-4301. Again, that number is 410-396-4301. You will, however, need to wait until you receive the formal written notice of the outcome of your case, which should be forthcoming in about 3 to 4 weeks, before you'll be able to get your permit. And we certainly urge that you please not build in the city of Baltimore without first obtaining all of your proper permits. If you haven't already done so, if you're here in opposition to any case today, we ask that you sign in our signing sheet, which is being held up now by Mr. French. The signing sheet allows us generally to know which cases have opposition, as well as who all needs to receive those aforementioned written notices I just referred to. And so please, if you're here in opposition to any case today, please make sure that you have signed in. Additionally, as we do have a number of cases which have been postponed, we need to know how to contact you to let you know when those cases will be going forward, as they will not be going forward today. The procedure for our cases today is the same as it is for all of our hearings. So when your case is called, you'll come forward. The applicant will stand to our left or your right. The opposition, if any, will stand to our right or your left. Once everyone is up here, we'll get you all sworn in, and then we'll begin with the applicant. Who'll be given the opportunity to present their documents, witnesses, testimony, and the like in support of their positions. Respond to any questions which the board might have, and generally discuss the issues which are involved in the appeal. Once they've concluded with their presentation, we'll then turn to the opposition, who will be given the opportunity to present their side of things, their documents and witnesses, etc. Once the opposition has concluded, the applicant will be given the opportunity to respond to any points brought up by their opposition, and then to offer a closing statement. We won't be going back and forth, unnecessarily delaying things and keeping folks here longer than is necessary. We'll be generally hearing the cases, as I said, in the order in which they appear on the docket. However, we do have some preliminary issues which we'll address first. There are a few cases which have been postponed and or withdrawn. First case that we have, which has been withdrawn, is 2017-67, 7129 Harford Road. That case has been withdrawn and will not be heard today. And then, is anyone here on 2017-96 and 2017-97? These are 2101 through 2103 East Fairmont Avenue. Wait. Yes, sir.
Yes, they're both withdrawn.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to confirm that. Those matters have been withdrawn as well and will not be going forward. Next, we have a few cases that have been postponed. 2017-94, 3551 Benson Avenue. That matter has been postponed. 2017-101, 17 North Chester Street. That matter has been postponed. There was an issue with the posting of that property, and so that case won't be going forward today. And then 2017-110, 5101 through 5103 York Road. That matter has also been postponed and will not be going forward today. So if you're here on any of those cases, or at least on the postponed cases particularly, make sure that you've please signed in so that we can let you know when those cases will be going forward, as they won't be going forward today. Obviously, the withdrawn cases won't be going forward at all. Next are the cases which are on our consent agenda, and the consent agenda consists of cases where the zoning board staff has already reviewed these files, and the board has concluded that there is sufficient information contained in the record submitted to approve these appeals on a consent basis. I'm going to read all of the consent cases off as a group, so if the first person, when you're called, if you can line up here, and then everyone else can line up behind them as they are called off, and then if you can just please stand in order, I guess in the order in which you're called. Once we've gone through the list and have everyone up here, those who intend to give testimony can raise their hands and be sworn in, and then you'll be given an opportunity to offer any information you would like to have added to the record as we call each case in turn. First case on our consent agenda is 2017-56, 3400 Mueller Street, Dave Carey. Yes, you'll come up here. And you'll stand right there. Next is 2017-98, 318 Kernway, Gregory Foster. – 2017-99, 2832 O'Donnell Street, Jennifer Hanoik. Next will be 2017-100, 317 South Broadway, Ivo Stoyanov. This will be 2017. Yeah, right back there. 2017-102, 800 South Streeper Street, Nick Federico. And 2017-103, 1819 Covington Street, John Lowry. And last will be 2017-111, 1602 Jackson Street, also John Lowry. Okay, I think this is everyone, so if you can all raise your right hands and be sworn, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, calling the first case on the consent agenda, which is 2017-56, 3400 Mueller Street.
Yes, sir.
You're Mr. Carey?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Carey, we have this as an application to construct a two-story rear addition and rooftop deck at this location. Is that correct?
Correct.
Mr. French, is there anything on behalf of the planning department?
Martin French for the Baltimore City Planning Department. Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Carey, did you have any other information that you would like to have added to the record at this time?
No.
All right. Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve the appeal. Thank you. Good luck.
Thanks.
Call again 2017-98, 318 Kernway, Gregory Foster. All right. Next, 2017-99, 2832 O'Donnell Street, Jennifer Hnoik. I'm sorry, ma'am?
You just call me Miss Jennifer, that's fine.
What's the correct pronunciation of your name, ma'am?
Hanyok.
Hanyok,
It's
okay. All right, Ms. Hanyok, we have this as an application to add microblading to our beauty salon at this location, is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Mr. French, anything for the planning department?
Yes, the Planning Department recommends approval of this application be subject to these conditions. Cosmetic tattooing or microblading occurs only during normal business hours of the existing beauty shop. All tattooing is done by appointment only, with no walk-ins, and no exterior signage advertises availability of tattooing on the premises. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and Ms. Hanyok, are those conditions stated by the planning department acceptable to you?
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, and is there anything further you would like to have added to the record this time?
No, thank you.
Okay. Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal. Good luck.
Thank you
Take
very
care.
much.
Next, 2017-100, 317 South Broadway, Ivo Stoyanov.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Stoyanov, we have this as an application to use as 3 dwelling units and first floor commercial with 4 off-site parking spaces, is that correct?
Correct.
Mr. French, anything with the planning department?
Yes, thank you. Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property is located within the Fells Point Historic District. On that basis, the department recommends approval of this application, subject to the conditions that the off-street parking provided to serve the residential use meets zoning code requirements, and that any exterior additions, demolition, or alterations are completed in accordance with an authorization to proceed issued by the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Stoyanov, are those conditions stated by the planning department acceptable to you?
Yes.
And is there anything further you would like to have added to the record this time?
As far as the exterior, we're not doing any alterations, so I don't know if that can be just
Okay.
taken off. And for the parking, I submitted some additional documents. It was a copy of the deed. I don't know if this is you have that? Okay.
Okay.
That's all.
All right. Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal. Good
Okay,
luck.
thank you.
Take care. All right, next, 2017-102, 800 South Streeper Street, Nick Federico.
Yes.
Afternoon, sir. We have this as an application to construct a second floor overhanging rear addition and rooftop deck at this location. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Mr. French, is there anything on behalf of the planning department?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
All right. And Mr. Federico, is there anything further you would like to have added to the record at this time?
No.
Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you.
Good luck. Next, 2017-103, 1819 Covington Street, John Lowry.
Yes.
Afternoon, sir. We have this as an application to construct a 2-story rear addition with rear and rooftop decks. That correct?
That's correct.
Mr. French, is there anything on behalf of the planning department?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
And Mr. Lowry, is there anything further you would like to have added to the record this time?
No thanks.
Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed the application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Great.
And the last one is 2017-111, 1602 Jackson Street, also John Lowry. And Mr. Lowry, we have this application, same as the last, to construct a 2-story rear addition with rear and rooftop decks at this location. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Mr. French, anything for the planning department?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Lowry, anything you would like to have added to the record?
No thanks.
Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal. Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
All right, next, we are going to call the remainder of our docket, which will include cases for which opposition is signed in. And frequently, we found that opposition is a result of either a lack of communication or miscommunication between the parties. And it can be useful to offer the parties an opportunity to have a dialogue between them to see if they can't come to a resolution to whatever dispute they're having. Obviously, if 2 parties to a dispute approach the board and ask the board to resolve the dispute, one of those 2 parties is bound to go away disappointed with the result. So this is your opportunity to avoid that unhappy fate. We're going to call off the cases where opposition is signed in and just ask you to stand where you are. We'll ask if the parties have had any discussions about a resolution and whether or not the parties wish to continue to have a discussion or have a discussion at this time. Certainly not obligated to take the opportunity to speak with one another, but we certainly do encourage and appreciate it. First case where we have opposition, which is signed in, is 2016-455, 901 South Caton Avenue, Caroline Hecker. All right. Okay. Anything accomplished or? Okay.
I represent several communities, and we're willing to continue the conversation if they'd like to postpone, but we're not willing to provide our support at this time.
Okay. All right. Have a seat. We'll call you in turn. Next is 2017-71, 2075 through 2085 Woodbourne Avenue, Jessica Bingham. Okay, folks, have we had an opportunity to speak?
Yes.
Any prospect that further dialogue will be fruitful?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, have a seat. We'll call you in turn. Everybody's so disagreeable today. All right, first, I think that's all of them. Yes, it is. So we can speed everyone else who's not so disagreeable through. We'll call the first case, which is 2017.
Yeah, I didn't realize that if you had opposition, you had to sign in. I didn't see that, so.
Yes, we discussed that. Are you here in opposition to any case, ma'am?
Pardon me?
Are you here in opposition to any case today?
Yes.
Okay. If you would like, you can come and sign in. And which case is that?
2017-104.
Okay,
Sorry about that.
that's okay. Right there, Dan. Sure. And I believe the gentleman, where he went. Okay. And who is the, I guess, applicant on that case, Mr. Brown? Okay. Have you had an opportunity to have a dialogue with these folks?
We've tried to talk about it a bit,
Okay. Just have a seat and we'll call you in turn. Sure. All right. In 2017-47, 509 through 513 South Broadway, Stephen Fogelman.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Afternoon, Mr. Fogelman.
Mr. Marks is here on behalf of Fells Point Residents Association. The applicant and the developers, sorry.
Come forward.
Thank you. Stephen W. Fogelman. Good afternoon, members and Mr. Chairman. We've met with both the Fells Point Community Organization and the Fells Point Residents Association and unable to come to an agreement, but we'd prefer to proceed here today.
Okay. I don't have this case as one where anyone had signed in, so if the.
signed in a minute
Okay. All right, thanks.
There are also some letters in the file.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Sure. Have a seat.
That discussion is the first one, call it
No. Let's see if we can get a 2017-70, 1606 Thames Street, Stephen Fogelman.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chairman and members. We are ready to proceed on that matter. We have an agreement with the with the Fells Point Residents Association and a letter from Councilman Cohen in the file.
Okay. Any witnesses?
Yes, I'll have two witnesses, manager and general manager.
Okay, if you want to call them up.
Great, thank you very much. Come on up, Mr. Lawson. And actually, just going to grab my materials very quickly. Thank you.
For the purpose for the record, I'm Theodore Lawson. I'm the general manager of the restaurant.
Okay, if you can spell that last name, sir.
Losin.
You said the first name was Theodore?
Theodore. Okay.
And was there another gentleman?
Well, there was, but he's the manager also.
Okay, and what's his name?
Vasilios Keramidas right here.
Okay, can we get a spelling on that last
Yes,
name?
sure. It's Keram.
Hold on a second, hold on a second.
testifying. Do I need to get the name?
I don't believe so. I'd like to make a proffer as to who he is, but, so.
Okay,
I can spell it.
I just wanted to have it in case he needed to testify. See,
Basilios, B-A-S-I-L-I-O-S. A-E-R-A-M-I-D-A-S.
All right,
okay, if, let's see here, all right, Mr. Fogelman, we have this as an application to add outdoor bar into the front yard of an existing restaurant/tavern with live entertainment, dancing, and outdoor table service, is that correct?
yes.
All right, if all those intending to give testimony can raise their right hands and be sworn, please.
You swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
All right, thank you.
He didn't respond.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, oh, I do, I'm sorry.
He's an attorney, so he's not used to doing that.
Years is not.
We're not trained.
I can't remember a traffic ticket.
All right, and do we have any staff reports?
We do. We received an email on April 11, 2017 from the president of the Fells Point Residents Association in support of the request for the outdoor patio bar. In addition to that, we've received a multitude of letters and petitions from the residents as well as nearby businesses within the surrounding area in full support of the proposal, stating that this establishment attracts a more mature crowd. The addition of the outdoor bar would be small in scope, and it is congruent with the neighborhood characteristics.
Thank you. Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property, in addition to being in the Fells Point Historic District, is an historic building. It has a wall approximately 3 feet tall in front of this courtyard between it and the sidewalk, and an opening which may originally have been gated. And because of this particular characteristic and the placement of the bar as shown on the floor plan, or site plan, I should say, which was provided by the applicant, the bar would be in full view of pedestrians on both sides of Thames Street. The department traditionally has recommended no outdoor bar, and as a result of this particular situation, believes that this recommendation should stand. The department recommends disapproval of the portion of the application relating to addition of the outdoor bar, and further recommends affirmation of these established conditions for accessory outdoor table service at this location. The sidewalk must remain clear and unobstructed for pedestrian use. The capacity of the outdoor seating area will not be increased nor diminished by displacement of seating and/or tables for purposes of adding an outdoor bar. There will be no outdoor bar, no outdoor music, jukebox, or other form of entertainment, and all patrons must be seated for dining and served by wait staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fogelman.
Everything except no outdoor bar. So, and I want to start this because, I mean, this is an out front bar. When we hear of outdoor bars, we often think of many other places, rooftops, backyards, close to neighbors. This is private out front commercial property that's been hosting many outdoor diners for decades now. The Fells...
One thing, Barry, that you said was diners, and just looking at the prior history in this case, I'm noting that, I guess in case number 99-198, the board approved use of the front yard for outdoor table service accessory to existing restaurant / tavern without live entertainment or dancing. One of the conditions was that it be located in the front yard only and that there be no outdoor bar. So you're looking to undo that. Again, there was, looks like in case number 03-339, there again was a list of various different conditions, including the prohibition on that there be no outdoor bar. So wouldn't this be a new use?
No. First, ironically and anecdotally, let me just indicate that that was a compromise with no outdoor bar between the Fells Point Residents Association and the applicants 18 years ago. And ironically and anecdotally, the person who was the president of that association 18 years ago referred me to this client. This is, to me, this is an existing use. They've been using for 18 years outdoor dining. And let me make this very clear. They want to put in an outdoor raw bar. It's almost a shame that we have to use the word bar because it instantly colors the discussion. This is a 12 to 15 seat raw bar. Yes, you would be able to order a beer at this bar. to be sure. It will reduce the number of patrons in the front courtyard. And more importantly, it will provide more eyes on the street and more eyes on the customer. Currently, as it stands, and this place has an 18-year history with no liquor board violations, no health department violations, no sanitation, no noise complaints. It's about as good as you can get. And it deserves to try a concept where we have full-time server outside, a full-time shucker outside. Currently, as it stands, if 4 customers come to get a beer at the outdoor tables, the waitress goes inside and for 4 or 5 minutes comes back with the beers. There's no one out there. This would provide with dedicated staff outside at all times. And like I said, this is an out front bar, not an outdoor bar. And so for the very use that has been going on for 20 years, to me, it's almost insignificant, the amount of change, especially if you're talking about actually reducing the number of seats and increasing the level of monitoring. It's a unique property. There's just nothing like it along that corridor. It's clearly commercial. It has almost no impact on neighbors, unlike possibly an outdoor backyard bar might. Given their incredible track record, they are, and just so you know, they were Callie's Court, what we're talking about. The building we're talking about now is both Fells Point Tavern and Meze. And I have menus, if you're familiar with they're excellent establishments, and they don't cause trouble. They want to beautify the neighborhood, and in that regard, they went through the design review committee of Fells Point and Federal Hill, and this design was unanimously approved.
You mean for Fells Point?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I thought the design review committee was had both of those neighborhoods, or they operate somehow
Fells
together.
Point and Federal Hill.
Yeah, but indeed, the DRC, right, unanimously approved it. Given, as I say, look, all over the country, outdoor bars they're all the rage. All these other cities have outdoor pop-up beer gardens. I'm not suggesting we throw it all away and do this, but I am suggesting that the no outdoor bar policy is a blanket policy, and that there is not one size fits all with the properties in the city. And this particular property is extremely unique in that it already has outdoor seating until 2 a.m. for alcohol. And there will be simply no disruption to the public if this plan is approved. In fact, there will be a mitigation of any potential disruption by virtue of the dedicated staff outdoors. Once again, it may be a bar, it's a raw bar, it may be outdoors, but it's out front, it's not out back. I think it's a unique situation, and I did want to, that's really all I have to say right now. We have 150 people who signed on the petition and support. We have unanimous support from the Fells Point Residents Association. The applicants are forward-thinking enough to agree to shut down even earlier than they legally are required in order to make sure that there's no disruption.
Okay. So describe to me the operation of the raw bar. So would someone going up to it be able to sit there and order beverages and not order food?
To be very frank with the chairman, the answer to that is yes. I mean, I would not want to mislead anyone. Someone could go up there and order a drink and not get a shucked oyster or not get shrimp or something of that nature. But this is not the kind of thing that we're going to pursue. I mean, food is our main staple. It has always been 70 to 75% of our sales at Fells Point Tavern, as it was at Callie's Court, is food. And this is our thing. In other words, this is what we want to do. This bar is an enhancement for us. As I explained, and I've talked to several, including Mr. French, people in the planning department, that we're not trying to change anything. This is an ambiance change for us. It's an enhancement, it's an extension of the type of operation that we have inside to the outside. We have this very, very unique courtyard that extends for around 40 feet on the Thames Street, maybe 20 feet or so, more or less. back towards the building. And we're going to maintain it, we're going to watch it, and no one's going to get away with any. It's not going to be some tiki bar where we're going to try and push people for liquor. We don't want that. The interesting part about it is we have a tavern license. We could very easily, but do this. We could control the thing and not serve food, but this is not our goal. Our goal simply is to serve food. We want a raw bar out there. It's an extension, it's an enhancement of everything we have. It's an
But isn't that
ambiance.
kind of the point? I mean, you just discussed that you could achieve more through your use, through your tavern use, but you choose not to. You could, if approved, you could have a tiki bar, like, not to disparage the actual establishment of that name, but you could have that kind of establishment, but you would choose not to. So isn't the controlling element there? It's just simply choice. So if, for example, I mean, businesses change hands. So you want to get out of the business, you sell it to someone else comes in and they want to get return on their investment. So they may not want to operate it as you have, and they want to operate it more aggressively. And so they do want to have a more freewheeling, less staid kind of operation. And then we've got a rather interesting precedent set.
You know, the precedent has come up often. It comes up in so many cases. And this came up, as a matter of fact, at the Residents Association meeting. This very point that you're bringing up is, you know, don't argue that we're going to do all these nice things. We've been a great neighbor for 19 years, but who knows what someone else could be. Everything changes in some day or another. You know, we can't, to be very candid with you all, we can't guarantee for the ultimate future what's going to be there. But we have ascertained and gathered so many people in the neighborhood who know what kind of operation we have, that this is part of what we want to do, to deny us the right to make our living out there with this enhancement, with this ambiance change. And this ambiance change that seems almost unjust.
To make sure that we're all on the same page, we are just speaking about the actual bar itself,
Yes.
not the outdoor seating aspect and all that.
Well,
Right,
the shucking's going to be done behind the bar.
Sure.
The shucking's going to be, and the limited amount of, liquor and beer that we can serve out there is also going to be somewhat limited. It's not a vastly large bar, to be very frank with you. But we have gathered so much support through the neighborhood. I mean, no one, virtually, we have no opposition to what we want to do. And
And let
can
me
we
jump in
guarantee
here.
forever? No, can we guarantee that the building won't fall down in Fells Point and someone else will dress it back?
Well, and my
But
point
with
frankly
that
was that, I knew that you couldn't guarantee something off into the future. But the board has to look at that contingency and has to address it. So when you come to present your plan, we can't just look at it just in a vacuum of your operation. We have to think of it a little bit more globally than that.
I appreciate that completely. However, as you may know, you can deal like that at the liquor board level. And should you approve us today, we'll go to the liquor board and ask their permission for approval. And with that, I don't think my clients have any problem agreeing that these zoning restrictions will only be good as long as you've got the current liquor licensees, which would prevent transfer. But we'll get into those details. But I can see that as a very real possibility. And bring Mr. Martz up here if you want. I understand what you're saying, but I mean, there are ways, whereas zoning, the restrictions go with the property, there may be a way with liquor board to compartmentalize those rights, so long as it's the current management.
You know, I could add one thing, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I don't want to prolong this. But in order to get to this, maybe I'm not using the right word, this tiki bar attitude of just strictly serving liquor out there someday, but without live entertainment, without music, without any kind of dancing or any of those things of that sort, that type of operation wouldn't work. We've been around there now for 19 or 20 years, and if that's the route you want to go, you're going to need entertainment outside, and we will not have anything like that. No entertainment, no live music outside, nothing of that nature.
Let me just
So we're going to keep it controlled.
Let me just make sure you get a couple more documents. We won't take all day on this. So the general manager and the manager both live in Fells Point. In the case of Mr. Karamides, he's been here for how long? For 1996, he's been in the restaurant business in Fells Point. Since 2009, he's been a full-time resident at Fells Point. Mr. Lawson is a full-time resident of Fells Point. These are people who are invested in the community. They understand how special and how precious Fells Point is. And the only reason they've even come to me and we've come to you is because their customers have asked for this. And their customers have said, you really, this would be great with the Baltimore waterfront, having oysters shucked outside on a nice day, seasonal. And that's the other thing I got to remind you, this is seasonal. So we're talking 9 months a year tops here. And if there are any problems, we are in a neighborhood that is extremely vigilant, that wants to keep its neighborhood. And if there are problems, those problems will come to light. Given the management we have here, I can't imagine. If these guys were my only client, I'd be out of business at the liquor board, that's for sure. So in any event, I got a letter of recommendation from Fells Point Main Street and a letter of support from Councilman Cohen in this matter. It may not have made the file yet.
Sure, you can pass that up. And I've been trying to locate it. It's kind of escaping me right now. Mr. Tanner, if you can help me locate this, it'd be appreciated. But I'm seem to recalling that there is a requirement in the code that businesses operate from within a structure, and that the only exception to that is for outdoor table service.
Yeah, I mean, I would obviously argue that there will be a physical structure. There will be a roof. Then we get into the question of walls.
Certainly, well, but
Takes you
I
back
think
to
that the way
smoking
that
ban,
the code says is that the only thing that the board can authorize as an exception to that is outdoor table service. That is, that the board would be without authority to authorize as a use that's not outdoor table service, such as a bar. Now, one thing that I'm kind of turning over in my head and I'm wondering about is whether or not you would be willing to agree that anyone seated at the bar could not order alcohol without ordering food.
Well, I think I'm quite sure that this would not be the kind of thing that would stand in the way of approval. We would make sure that that would be the case.
So that's a lawyerly answer of yes.
I was going to say.
To the board, to be very frank with you, I mean, if we get down to, to a wordage kind of thing, I think we could go with that. There's no question in my mind that we could operate under that restriction. That you can't just sit around and drink beer all day, drink liquor all day. And I think that if this were the thing that would carry it, I would go for it. Like I've explained to Mr. Fogelman and myself, I don't even believe that it's proper to restrict us to midnight for service, since we have the right to serve.
I was getting
We can serve liquor outside there now.
I wanna get
19 or
until you're
20
right on the
years, but
precipice.
We'll go along with it in the spirit of compromise.
Which again is limiting his statutory rights. That space, he already statutorily can serve booze until 2 a.m. and he's now
Inside,
dialing that,
yes.
and outside at the outdoor tables. He's still,
Yes,
right.
yes, at the outdoor tables.
So he's
that's
actually
correct.
taken apart almost a half of this outdoor table service area and voluntarily agreeing to restrict and limit the sale of the hours of the sale of alcoholic beverages.
I certainly do appreciate that.
That section that you were referring to is under the general requirements for business districts, which says uses to be enclosed, except as specified in paragraph 2, business, service, processing, and storage uses must be located within enclosed structures, and the exception is it does not apply to off-street parking and loading, outdoor table service that's accessory to a restaurant and has been approved by the board, and to the extent expressly authorized by an applicable urban renewal plan, the display of merchandise for sale to the public.
Thank you. And I might just add to that, that in fact, the proposed bar we have is every bit a structure as the beautiful outdoor bar at Bo Brooks in Canton, as the beautiful outdoor bar at the Pendry Hotel, which even has live entertainment. So it's a structure.
Okay.
You know, it's not a stretching of words or descriptions. I guess, is a bar a table? I mean, what's the definition of a table? I mean, the whole idea is, what I think what the city probably doesn't want, you don't want hundreds of people or dozens of people just standing around and milling around. That's probably the impact and the import, actually, of this, which we're not gonna have. We don't have the room for it, and we don't want it. They're gonna sit at that bar and order, they're gonna be at our tables, which are still gonna be there on the other side. And so we're gonna adhere pretty much to the meaning of the law to the letter.
And I want to distinguish this case because I believe it's worthy of it. It is a unique property. It's not to me, it's no more an outdoor bar than it is an out front raw bar. And I'm, once again, with the semantics, I mean, if you walk into Fadley's, if you walk into Lexington Market, it's a raw bar. Maybe
Sure.
there's a couple of guys drinking beer.
The phrase there, you said walk into, because both of those
Touche.
phrases are.
That's true. They have a gate. I mean, they have this front gate. Yeah, you have to walk into their courtyard, and you can drink then. And so that's why, in closing, I'd ask that you consider the special relationship that these applicants have with their community, their long track record. If this was anybody else, I don't think that they would have supported it, to be honest with you. And they did it because they know we've got good operators who are willing to compromise, and operators who are willing to look out for the neighborhood just like they do because they live there.
What would be the impact on the operation if the drinks were just brought from inside, the inside bar?
That's what we currently have. And so what that entails is a server takes your order, she goes inside, pours the drinks, makes the drinks. It might be 3, 4, 5 minutes before I get back, and presents them to the diner's table side. All this would be a place to, while you're seated, to have oysters being shucked for you. It would also add a visual element to Thames Street, where freshly made seafood is being served. And so there would be, in fact, an improvement. And again, it's hard when these guys have never had any legal problems or city problems. It's hard to say, well, we're going to make them even better. But I think we are, because during those 5 minutes while I'm making your drinks, I don't know if you're being loud out front. I don't know what you're doing. They don't even want people smoking in that courtyard. But so if I've got a shucker and a full-time server and a gate person, it means, like I said, more eyes on the street and more eyes on the patrons. And that's almost always a positive thing.
But you could still have the raw bar with service coming from inside, beverage service coming from inside.
Yes, and as Mr. Lawson has described it, he believes it's a thing of beauty and ambiance, and it's something that would actually enhance your walk down historic waterfront Thames Street.
This creates a completely different feel, extend the inside out into the courtyard area. And this means a lot. I mean, we've been around for 19 years doing this, so we really have the nuances of what the restaurants need and what we need to enhance our business. It's critical for us.
I thank you for your consideration.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna go off the record for a couple minutes. Okay, we'll go back on the record. Calling another one from earlier, 2017-98, 318 Kernway, Gregory Foster. Okay. And we'll go to 2017-108, 4103 North Rogers Avenue, Mohammed Dukuli.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. All right, we have this as an application to construct a one-story attached garage. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you could raise your right hand and be sworn, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, do we have staff reports?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
We have no other.
Okay, that's it. All right. Sir, why don't you tell us a bit about what you are planning here? And if during your discussion you can also let us know what the current use of the property is?
The current use now is a single-family house.
Okay. And this is a garage to go onto it?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And how many bays will the garage have?
We have one bay.
One bay, okay. Trying to see if we have a floor plan of it. How big will it be?
The garage is actually 30. The garage is actually 30 foot 6 inches.
Is that
long,
high,
long,
wide?
30 foot 6 inches long.
Okay, so it's.
How high?
So it's 34 feet, 6 inches?
No, 30 foot 6 inches.
So 30 feet, 6 inches long, and then how wide?
How wide it is currently now, or the projected one?
The garage.
It's actually 22 foot 4 inches. 22 foot
Okay.
4 inches.
Okay. So 22 feet by 4 inches, no, 22 feet, 4 inches by 30 feet, 6 inches long.
Right.
And I suppose it's one story, and how high will it be?
It is currently 15 foot 6 inches.
Now, you said currently there. Is this a structure that's already built?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
At least the past 6 years.
Okay. So I've got an aerial here from, looks like it's from December. Where's the garage on that?
Can I circle this?
Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so this entire structure here,
Yes, it is.
that's alongside the larger, looks like 3-story structure.
It's next to it.
Okay, yeah, I see, it's adjacent, just right there.
Roger that, yes.
Okay. And that's only 30 feet by 22 feet?
The
The
second,
structure here is 30 feet by 22 feet?
Can I take a look again at that?
Sure.
No, what's above the garage is what is an additional, in additional closed-in area that's above the garage.
Okay, so this is a 2-story structure here, and you're saying that there's a garage that's underneath of it?
Yes, it is.
This is a single-family home?
Yes, it is.
I guess that's what the confusion, well, some of the confusion stems from, is that we've seen some indication that it's a much larger, that the size of the structure is much larger than one would see in a single-family home. Mr. Tanner, do we have the inspection photos?
Yes, we have lots of photos. Plus we have the drawing that was submitted that's very confusing and misleading because it shows the existing single-family home as 2.5-story wood frame detached dwelling. the garage appears, as you described, 30 feet 6 inches by 22 feet, to be in the rear of that structure. And that is totally different than what the aerial photographs show of the existing building, which shows a much larger 3-story detached building. With an addition that projects way into the rear yard beyond what you show on your drawing for the garage. So the physical arrangement of the structures and the drawings don't match. So we're trying to figure out what actually is going on there. There was a previous appeal in 2007 for a fence that was postponed and never came back to the board. At that time, there was a much different structure on the property. We do have aerial photography from the city's pictometry record that shows kind of progression of the construction of the site from 2008 through 2015 that shows a whole progression of additions that were built on the property that are very confusing when compared to the drawing that you submitted.
So are we saying that we probably need to get an inspector out there to?
Well, we would like to have a drawing that reflects what you're building compared to the existing structure on the lot.
Okay.
Do we have the permits that are on file too?
There is a record of the permit history. It shows a number of permits that have been issued over since 2007. They all reflect work done on the property, but there's no permits that deal with the existing use of the property other than single family.
And I think that the descriptions indicate a much larger encompassing use than merely single family.
Permit that was in 2008 that was issued to make interior alteration of the building for 2 tubs, 9 sinks, 5 toilets, 4 showers, 2 gas furnaces, 300 amp service, 60 plugs, 75 lights, 20 telephone outlets, 20 TV cable outlets, 10 smoke detectors. Things like that are not normally associated with a single-family dwelling. So it leads to some questions as to what the use of the property is.
Well, let me at least give you this information. I'm currently an electrical contractor. When I received this is my first property that I ever bought. When I received it, I said to myself I was going to do something that was going to be different than a traditional contractor that worked. I took a 1,930 square foot and turned it into 7,500. This is my retirement right here. This is 5 bedroom, 7 bath, and a 3-car garage. I don't know what else that I could.
It was a 1-car garage.
No, it's a 3-car because the length of the 30 foot would determine it's a 3-car garage. It won't tell you determine
Well, you
it's.
said it was 1. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, well, I misspoke then. It definitely is a 3-car garage because of the length of the garage and the width of it would determine that it's a 3-car garage.
Well,
That's what I did. And
based
the
on
last,
the record that we have here, there's confusion about whether or not your structure complies with a single-family development in an R3 residential neighborhood. You're allowed to cover up to 30% of your lot with a structure. It appears that you've gone beyond that, but there's no way for us to determine it without a site plan that shows the existing conditions.
Only on the garage side that I have exceeded that
The-
boundary line.
The drawing that you submitted shows a 2.5 wood frame structure with a garage attached. And what you have on site is a 3-story masonry building that covers much more than what your drawing shows. It also shows that there's a projection in the rear from your garage that projects into the rear yard beyond the 25-foot setback requirement,
Which is your second floor deck?
which is enclosed.
No.
Well, the photographs show that it's some type of structure on the second floor that looks like an enclosure
Well, on the second floor is above the garage, not above the deck.
in the rear yard.
No,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I can just tell you what we found on our record
Okay.
here.
The deck is showing,
drawing certainly
the
doesn't
deck is
show
showing the
anything.
flat, you see a flat portion.
You
What's
have a
on top
permit
the-
for that deck?
Yes, we do. What's on top the,
There's no record of it.
what's on top the deck is enclosed. But what's not, I'm sorry, what's on top the garage is enclosed, not what's on top the deck.
So we need an accurate reflection on a drawing that shows what's there in order for the board to make an informed decision.
Okay, so in this case, what would you recommend me to do at this point? What would you like to see me do at this point?
An actual drawing of the site plan that reflects what's there, so that we can assess the bulk regulations required and see if this complies.
Okay,
Question,
yes, sir.
show you this drawing. This is the structure protruding into the backyard, I think that Mr. Tanner's referring to. What is that?
That's the garage. No, that's the deck. That's the deck. That's the garage, right here.
And that doesn't show on your drawing?
That's an open air,
Yes, sir.
uncovered
Yes.
deck that's in the rear of the garage.
Yes, no, on the second floor.
Well, it's attached to the garage.
It's over.
Second floor.
It's still
Okay.
part,
Right, it's not on the first floor
Right.
like a typical deck would be. It's on the second floor.
Right, okay. It's, as Mr. Tanner is pointing out, it's not reflected on the drawings that you've submitted to us for consideration.
All right.
Okay. So, as Mr. Trainer has indicated, that one of the concerns here is that the drawing which has been submitted isn't accurate. I would note that it looks like it's a stamped drawing as of 2005. So that likely explains the discrepancy between what's shown in the drawing and what the property actually looks like. I would recommend that you take the time to obtain an updated and accurate drawing. And frankly, I think that there needs to be something confirming that this is actually a single-family use. As Mr. Tanner has indicated, that there are restrictions on, it looks like there have been expansions made to the house, which may run afoul of the applicable bulk regulations in the zoning district for single-family dwellings, or if it's another kind of dwelling. We need to know that. So I think it might be useful for you to postpone your hearing today so that you can try to address these issues. But the choice, of course, is yours.
Sure, I definitely would like to withdraw it, take your advice on that. But however, how would I reach to that point to let you guys know that this is a single-family house?
Well, if you had it inspected, that might be one thing.
Well, I filed on the inspection, it's a single-family house. The dwelling is a single-family dwelling.
I understand that you had submitted it that way.
Right.
But there probably needs to be someone to verify that.
Mr. Spigner, one of the inspectors, Baltimore City inspector, was in the property 3 weeks ago. He wrote his report 3 weeks ago. I'm assuming that this is the last time that he was in there. So,
Who is that?
Mr. Spigner.
Not familiar with that name.
So are you going to postpone for today, or do you want to?
Sure, I will.
All right. If you want, you can give Mr. Tanner a call. There's a card.
Okay.
And you can contact the board office to try to work through some of these issues, most particularly getting an updated site drawing, and also if there are other city agencies that you need to contact or pull in, such as housing to do an inspection, we can coordinate that with you or direct you as appropriate there.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, for now, 2017-108, 4103 North Rogers Avenue is postponed. Thank you, sir. Maybe you can have that added to the record. Right? Okay. 2016-455, 901 South Caton Avenue, Caroline Hecker.
Good afternoon. Caroline Hecker, Rosenberg, Martin Greenberg on behalf of Two Farms, Inc. I'm joined by my colleague Justin Williams, as well as Kristen Saw from St. Agnes Hospital, Jeff Bainbridge from Royal Farms, Two Farms, and that's Danielle Brock back there with the exhibits, who is with Arcane K, our site engineer.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Hecker, we have this as an application to construct an 8-pump gasoline service station and convenience store at this location. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. If all those intending to give testimony can please raise their right hands and be sworn, please. Actually, I guess we have to wait for your architect. That's okay. Take your time.
So it's Kristen what?
Saw, S-A-A-H.
S-A-A-H? Jeff Bainbridge.
Yep. B-A-I-N Bridge.
All right, everybody raise your right hands, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay. Do we have staff reports?
We do. We received, excuse me, a letter from the Violetville Community Association dated January 17, 2017, citing 5 principal concerns. One, that they have not received any information relative to the project since 2014, that there were currently 3 Royal Farms within a 1-mile radius and 9 Royal Farms within a 3-mile radius of the prospective site, and they were worried about the adverse impacts relative to the local businesses. In addition, they were worried about the unhealthy food choices that Royal Farms traditionally provides, which will further exacerbate the health issues facing the Gwynn Falls area. In addition, they were worried about the 24-hour establishment that would perhaps increase criminal activity and attract panhandlers. And in addition to that they have had no discussion with the project managers relative to any potential local hiring practices.
Planning Department has been working with this applicant for probably a year or more at this point. This property is part of the Cardinal Gibbons High School property, and this particular development plan has been reviewed by the Site Plan Review Committee. In that review, the Department of Transportation of Baltimore City noted the requirements for several improvements in the area, specifically at Caton Avenue. And the department itself is also concerned about the overall development of what's called the Gibbons site, and this property's corresponding position within the Gibbons site master plan. The Department of Planning recommends approval of this proposed use be subject to the condition that widening of northbound Caton Avenue from north of Benson Avenue to the existing school entrance, a distance of approximately 375 feet in length along the east side of Caton Avenue, be completed prior to issuance of the use and occupancy permit for the proposed use to help ensure safety for motorists entering and exiting the service station and convenience store. The department further recommends approval of the proposed use be subject to final approval by the Planning Department of the site plan for the portion of the Gibbons site master plan area that would be used by the applicant, and Planning Commission approval of the design of the development. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Ms. Hecker, are those conditions stated by the Planning Department acceptable to your client?
They are, yes.
Okay. I guess one thing that's occurring to me is I'm remembering there was a prior case involving road widening and issues like that, and there was an issue with the wording and all that.
Yes. In this case, the Planning Department, I think appropriately, has recommended that the road work be completed prior to the issuance of a permit, which is what was not included in the condition in the other case. So I think we're comfortable with the way the Planning Department has proposed it.
All right. Please proceed.
I think I'd like to proceed by way of a proffer in large part, and then let Ms. Saw, Mr. Bainbridge, and Ms. Brock speak for a few minutes about a few different items. And then obviously we'll hear from the opposition, and then I'll conclude at the end. The subject property here, Mr. Williams is handing out a folder full of exhibits that I'll walk through in a little bit of detail. The subject property is the former Cardinal Gibbons campus located across the street from St. Agnes Hospital. It's a 32-acre parcel that St. Agnes is redeveloping. St. Agnes acquired it in 2012 after Cardinal Gibbons closed, and they've been working with the city, going through a design review process. There's been some community outreach to figure out what to do with this large parcel. They purchased it perhaps a little bit defensively so St. Agnes could control what was occurring across the street, make sure it didn't turn into a giant strip shopping center or something else that wasn't consistent with the hospital's mission, and also become an asset to the community. So the subject parcel that we're here on is at the very southeast corner of the property along Caton Avenue. And I've included in the file an aerial photograph of the site. You can see it's this is an older photo, but it's a large green space where the former school campus was located. I've also included in the file a development diagram showing the parts of the proposed redevelopment of the Cardinal Gibbons campus. It shows the pieces, the yellow and green pieces are things that have already been completed. They've been working with Bon Secours to create workforce housing. There's an 80-unit building located along DeSoto Road that's already constructed. They've been working with the Cal Ripken Foundation to reconstruct the Babe Ruth baseball field. Before this was Cardinal Gibbons High School, it was St. Mary's Industrial School, and I think their most famous alum was Babe Ruth, who learned to play baseball here. The field has been reconstructed, and they've also constructed a parking lot that serves the hospital along Caton Avenue there, as well as some of the stormwater facilities are also constructed already. I've included also in the file an article from the Baltimore Business Journal explaining sort of the master planning aspects, and a rendering showing the ultimate build-out of the site once it's completed, sort of centered around this Babe Ruth baseball field. There's also in the file a plan that shows the current conditions, which, as I said, includes the Bon Secours project, the baseball field, and the parking lot located along Caton Avenue. But in order to finance all these great nonprofit, community-focused projects located on the Cardinal Gibbons campus, St. Agnes is partnering with several commercial tenants, including Royal Farms, to redevelop some commercial anchors on the property. And the Baltimore-based company Royal Farms was seen as a good fit for the project because it'll provide goods and services to the community, to the hospital across the street. It has great access to the highway, and Royal Farms has an existing store located on Wilkins Avenue, not too far away, that they're planning to close and relocate to this space, as it'll be a much better site for them. Where they are currently is a very tight site. There's no opportunity for expansion there. They have had some crime issues there, and we expect to be able to rectify those things with the new site on the Gibbons Commons campus. I've also included in the file an article about the Royal Farms project that was from back in 2015 when we first started this, the Royal Farms aspect of the project. As Mr. French noted, we've been working on this for a little while now. We went through a rezoning exercise in 2014, 2015 to rezone this portion of the property to B22, which is a commercial zoning district where the Royal Farms is permitted as a conditional use, or the gas station, excuse me, is permitted as a conditional use subject to zoning board approval. And the Royal Farms parcel is also identified in a ground lease between Gibbons Commons LLC and Two Farms Inc. And I've included the exhibit with a legal description of that in the file just so that everybody's clear about what parcel we're talking about, because technically it is all one big lot. In terms of the proposed Royal Farms project, I've included a site plan and a landscaping plan in the file that show the layout of the site. They're proposing to have 4 product dispensers, which is 8 fueling stations, 2 on each, as well as a convenience store that's a little over 5,300 square feet. There will be 68 off-street parking spaces on the site. As Mr. French noted, the project has been reviewed by the Site Plan Review Committee, and at the recommendation of the Department of Transportation, we're undertaking several traffic improvements to improve circulation into the site and to improve traffic safety in the area. We're creating a right-in, right-out entrance along Caton Avenue, and we're installing flex posts along the middle of Caton Avenue to prevent southbound motorists from turning left into the Royal Farms. We're adding a right turn lane to South Caton Avenue as well to ease traffic flow coming off the highway. And southbound motorists who won't be able to make that left because of the flex posts will turn in at the signalized intersection that's a little bit further north. And there's a plan in the file that shows the traffic circulation and the various entrances. And Ms. Brock in a moment will go through the access issues in a little bit more detail. In terms of the site plan, there are no variances required. We're meeting the off-street parking requirements. We're meeting all the setback requirements. They will be providing outdoor seating with the Royal Farms, which will be permitted under Transform Baltimore once they open. That's going to be authorized under the new zoning code by right, so we don't need any special approval for that piece. But we are here, as I said, on the conditional use for the gas station component. And you know, we had met with the community associations back in 2014, 2015 as we were beginning this process. And I've included in the file our earlier correspondence with the community associations, and you'll see that we had letters of support from the Violetville Community Association, Wilhelm Park, Morrill Park, and St. Paul's, and from Seton Keogh High School, all back in 2014, 2015. And between then and now, there was a change in leadership at St. Agnes, and there was clearly a gap in communication. The folks who had been handling the community outreach with St. Agnes are no longer with St. Agnes, and the contact information that St. Agnes had for the community associations was no longer valid, and we had filed this application at the end of last year with a hearing date scheduled for the end of January, and we had reached out to the community associations over and over again, but hadn't gotten any response because, as we later learned, we had incorrect information. But we did agree to reschedule the hearing that was scheduled for January 31st so that we would have an opportunity to meet with the community associations, which we did on March 1st. We attended their community meeting, and they did raise several concerns with us, which Royal Farms has made an effort to address, which were indicated in the letter that they had sent to the board in advance of the last hearing. They are concerned, I understand, about security and safety. Particularly, they've noticed that there has been some issues with crime at the other Royal Farms location. The difference between that location and this location is, first of all, this will be a new store. It'll be well lit. But also, St. Agnes is a 24-hour operation. This Royal Farms will serve people who are coming to and from the hospital, and they're going to be coming to and from the hospital at all hours. And Royal Farms really has found that busy stores don't get robbed. And where we have people who are going to be there, all the time, we don't expect that this store will have the same type of security concerns that their other location does. In addition, St. Agnes has security personnel that patrol not only its own campus, but also the Cardinal Gibbons campus across the street. And so there is that additional element of security involved on this site that we don't see elsewhere. With regard to their concern about local hiring, Royal Farms has definitely experienced a benefit of having its employees work or live in the neighboring community associations. They have made an effort to hire locally, and they also want to be good members of the community, so they really make an effort to participate in local community events things, that go on in the neighborhood. They want to be part of the neighborhood. And so they're definitely open to, hiring from local community members. And with regard to the community's concern about having healthier food choices, Royal Farms obviously is known for its fried chicken, and they're not going to deny that. But they also do offer healthier alternatives. It really is up to the customer to make the appropriate choice. They have a good-to-go section, which has fresh fruit, vegetables, salads, wraps. They offer deli meats and grilled meats in addition to the fried chicken. So, they really, they're obviously not standing in for a full-service food store, and St. Agnes is definitely, they would love to have a grocery store tenant elsewhere on the site. Having a Royal Farms here doesn't foreclose the opportunity of having a grocery store somewhere else. But Royal Farms really will offer these items that really may not be available elsewhere very readily in the community. And it really is up to the customer to make the appropriate choices. I think with that, I want to turn it over to Ms. Sa to speak a little bit about St. Agnes, and then we'll have Ms. Brock talk a little bit about the site plan, and conclude with Mr. Bainbridge to talk a little bit more about Royal Farms, and then we'll turn it over to the other folks.
All right, thanks.
Just a quick few words about the vision of the site. Since we've acquired the property, we see it as a community asset, and we have partnered with some local, made some local partnerships. We have a community housing development now on site that we partnered with Bon Secours and Enterprise Homes. We, in conjunction with Cal Ripken Foundation, we have a new ballpark on the site. In addition, the Y has now taken over, the Y of Central Maryland has taken over the ball field for us, and so we're getting a lot of action there. It's a great community resource, and we are in talks with them to take over more parts of the facility to provide further recreational facilities. We see the site as an opportunity to better serve the community that we have served for over 150 years. And so we have an interest in making sure that whatever we put on that property best serves us as St. Agnes as well as the community. So this is a small portion of what we see as a bigger community investment. We do see this as green space, recreational, and community services and housing. This small section on the end does provide an economic resource for us to help sustain this site. It's also well needed to have some convenience in that corridor there, in Southwest Baltimore. So as a community hospital, we are very invested in our community and what goes there. We also have an interest in activity to this site. We have had some problems in the past when there wasn't so much activity. Now that we have the ball field up and running, we have activity, the Y is there, games, practices, things are happening, and putting the Royal Farms is only going to help us get some activity on the site as we continue to go through our development plans on the property. That's it.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
So the zoning regs notwithstanding, I see a little bit of irony for a leading healthcare provider in the community, particularly known for cardiac care.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best cardiac step-down programs in the area for sure. Does St. Agnes not see a conflict of being a healthcare provider with a business like Royal Farms?
The primary function of this business to us is a gas station. They do provide food more as a convenience for people coming and going, and there's very limited choices there anyway. We do understand that people have choices to make. Yes, their fried chicken isn't of the healthiest, but they do have healthy choices. I've been in we have a lot of Royal Farms here in Baltimore that I come in and out of, and I'm still responsible for making my choices. So yes, we understand there's a food component there, but the primary driver of this is the gas station.
The irony is my primary care physician is affiliated with St. Agnes.
Yes.
And as he's constantly on me about my weight, he's told me to stop eating so much chicken.
Stop going to Royal Farms and eating their chicken?
Yeah.
Everything in moderation.
Yes, everything in moderation. So yes, we do contribute a lot to community outreach and efforts to help people make better choices, and we plan on our hope is to put some more resources like that on that facility as we go through this development, some more community resources.
I totally get that. It's just that this particular operation brands itself with that particular food choice.
Yeah. And it is the economic component of this property, and because of its placement, a gas station serves it well.
Thank you.
Just gonna kind of reiterate what Ms. Hecker said about the access to the site.
I need your name, ma'am.
Oh, sorry, Danielle Brock, I'm civil engineer with RK&K. As part of our traffic mitigation agreement with DOT planning, we are adding a third lane to Caton Avenue, which will provide a right-in and a right-out only to access the site. There's also a signalized entrance, which is across from the hospital entrance, that is the main entrance for the whole Gibbons Commons site. So cars can also, if they miss the first turn, they can make the right in and come around to the site. We are meeting all the landscape requirements, stormwater management requirements with the microbial retention. You're not allowed to make the left-hand turn off of Caton. Part of the agreement is that we have to add the flex post so cars aren't able to make that turn. And that's really it. You have 2 access points to get to the site. And the widening actually makes the level of service on Caton Avenue the same as it is today, or if not better.
There are 4 pumps each with 2 fueling positions located in the front along Caton Avenue, and the stores in the rear with parking surrounding.
You said that there were how many parking spaces?
68.
Okay.
And yeah, there's 3 handicap parking spaces.
And that lane that's coming along the, I guess, the front edge of the property?
This way?
No, the road.
Yes.
Yeah. That's the exit that comes off of 95?
Correct.
Is that
Yep, that's this way, yes. Benson Avenue is right here.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so you're coming down from 95, yes.
Okay. Because I'm remembering years ago, there was a short period where our daughter went to a daycare center that was operated over in St. Agnes, so I'm a little bit familiar with this little stretch of road there. And as I'm recalling, that there's like a speed camera that's there because there's a lot of problems with traffic coming off of the highway and people appropriately reducing speed. So have you factored kind of that in with, so you got the people coming in off the exit, and then you've got traffic discharging out of the site into that?
So yes, so the St. Agnes had their own traffic study completed, and then the city did their own traffic study as well. We're basing it off of the city's, their traffic study and the limits of where they said that we need to start the right-hand turn and where to taper it. So that's all following the mitigation plan.
Okay, so you said that you're adding a lane?
Yes, it's currently 2 lanes. We're adding the right in, right out, but that's gonna turn into a 3rd lane, that people can get into that lane in order to access the site.
It's right here. Okay, so the new lane that you're creating?
Yes, this
Is
3rd one here.
that?
The brown,
Yes.
yes.
So, will the traffic turn out into that instead of out into the roadway where the cars currently zip down Caton Avenue off of 95?
Yes, you're gonna get into the through lane, and then you can get into the middle lane in order to keep going straight. Or if you missed your turn, you can then turn right into the site.
Okay.
This
so-
will be extended once more of Gibbons Commons is expanded. The mitigation report requires us to extend this 3rd lane further down. Caton Avenue.
But I'm just trying to understand whether or not you're going to have cars discharging into a lane with traffic that already travels at a high speed, or if you're creating another lane so that those cars that are turning out are turning into like a dedicated lane for that traffic as opposed to the high-speed traffic coming off the highway.
I think I understand what you're asking.
Good.
The brown lane here ends at this intersection, so
Mhm.
if you're exiting the site, you're coming into not one of the 2 lanes that already has high-speed traffic coming down
Thank you.
Caton Avenue. It'll take you up to this intersection where you can turn into the site if you want, otherwise you'll merge back into
Gotcha.
this entire lane.
How do you turn south out of the Royal Farms?
You have to go back to the main entrance.
There's a traffic
There's a
light
traffic
here.
light there.
It's the same line at the hospital entrance.
So you can come out of Royal Farms and go, this loop road has already been built, and that jug handle is already built as well, in the gray area. And then you can make a left.
That's dropping out at the light,
Yes.
main intersection across
Yes.
from the hospital. So this isn't actually literally on the corner, it's down
Yeah,
south.
it's, yes.
How about signage for the southbound Caton Avenue traffic that has to turn at the, I guess, the jug handle entrance?
We're updating all signage, so that traffic patterns are clear and it's understandable where they're
That's
supposed to.
quite a ways from the store itself, and if you're driving southbound, you're gonna drive right past the turn.
We'll have to have
and
some
you won't
directional
Be able to
signage.
make the left because of the flex cones.
That's right, and because actually this is all one parcel, Royal Farms can put a sign up here to let people know that if they want to get to the Royal Farms, they need to make this turn without violating the rules.
We, as the operator, want that to happen. We don't want U-turns, people, missing it.
Yeah, I see people driving past that intersection and
This
then
is-
realizing.
This is unique access for us. Normally, we have much more direct access onto the road, full access onto the road, but we looked at it, worked with the city, and we've been working with St. Agnes for 3 or 4 years now. And unfortunately, the best way we could get it on Caton Avenue was at the light there. My name's Jeff Bainbridge with Royal Farms, and Caroline really mentioned everything, but I'll just go through a couple points. We are Baltimore-based, based in Baltimore City here. We've been working with St. Agnes for a number of years now on this thing. Councilman Reisinger, we're excited about it. We're excited about the foresight that they put in and the planning they put into the whole campus here, and we're excited that they chose us. As Carolyn mentioned, we do have another store on Wilkins Avenue that we're kind of at our wits' end on. We do have some crime issues there. It's a smaller store, very small parking lot. There's a light pole right in the middle of the parking lot. People back into it all the time. Me, as the director of real estate, been charged to try to find alternatives for this. We can't in that particular area. We can't expand it one way or the other. So when this opportunity came up, it was just it was the right call for us to be able to close that store, which is in the county, bringing everything over into the city now. And we don't expect to have the crime issues that we have over at that location, because typically the stuff we have in the county, when people rob in the county, they come into the city, and then the city kind of says, well, it was in the county that it happened. This is all going to be in the city. And St. Agnes has their own security force there. Of course, we're going to have a much busier store, more well-lit and things, so we think it's going to be a much safer situation than what we currently have. And it's going to be a much better customer experience for folks than we have up there in Wilkins Avenue. It's just a really, really small legacy store, something we built 30 years ago that doesn't fit today's marketplace. So we're excited about it. We'll employ about 40 people, about 75 construction jobs, be about 6 months worth of construction, and significant dollars to invest. So again, we're just thankful that St. Agnes chose us, and we're happy to continue to invest in Baltimore City.
Just curious, does Royal Farm have some algorithm or study that says what's the best use within like how close in proximity you are to other Royal Farms? Because you're closing this one that's right just over the county line, but there's 2 on Washington Boulevard, depending on which way you go.
No, I mean, one would think we would have some back office algorithm pointing it out, saying here where we need to go. No, it's feel. It's also, we get some interaction from our own customers through social media and just regular communications in the store and such. So we expect this to be a totally different traffic pattern than our other stores. We do have a number of other stores in the Baltimore City area, within the nine within the 3 mile, whatever it is. I don't know. That seems high. But there's no doubt that it makes sense to close this Wilkins Avenue store. It doesn't have fuel. We're never going to be able to add fuel to it. Again, it has like 5 parking spaces that are convenient to the customer, 2 of which back into the light pole. So this is going to be a much nicer situation.
I I'd just like to go through the legal standards for the conditional use real fast. There is an outline in the file that goes through them in a little bit more detail, but in terms of the things the board's required to consider in approving the conditional use, the nature of the proposed site, including size and shape. This is a 3-acre parcel within a 32-acre development. It's located along a busy commercial corridor. Because it's such a nice big site, it allows for us to construct the store with the gas with no variances. We have a generous green space allowing for plenty of landscaping. In terms of resulting traffic patterns and adequacy of proposed off-street parking and loading, we're not expecting that the gas station is going to generate any significant amount of new traffic. Generally, the gas station picks up traffic that's already on the road, people who are already coming and going probably from the hospital or from other places within the Gibbons campus and within the community. We are making several transportation traffic improvements that we've discussed, and we think that those will really improve safety and address any concerns relating to access in and out of the site. In terms of the nature of the surrounding area and the extent to which it may impair its present and future development, the site was recently rezoned to the B22 district in recognition of the commercial corridor that it is located on. St. Agnes owns this property as well as the hospital across the street. They are probably the biggest neighbor in the vicinity. They have a vested interest in ensuring that the development of this parcel is something that complements the rest of the Gibbons Commons campus as well as the neighborhood and the hospital itself. In terms of the proximity of other dwellings, churches, schools, public structures, again, this is located within a 32-acre development parcel. It is adjacent to St. Keogh High School. That is planned to be closed at the end of this school year, so we don't know what's going to happen next on the adjacent property, but we know that it's not going to be a school for very much longer. There are, a handful of dwellings, in the Wilhelm Park community behind the Gibbons Commons campus. The Violetville community is located across Caton Avenue, and we think that this will provide an amenity to residents of both communities. The site has adequate access for fire and police protection. Again, it's been reviewed by the Site Plan Review Committee, and the construction of such a relatively small, under 5,400 square foot convenience store with 4 fuel dispensers is within a 3-acre parcel is not going to impede light and air to this premises or any premises in the vicinity. There are plenty of adequate public facilities to serve the proposed gas station. The site will meet the new stormwater regulations. You've seen the stormwater ponds already constructed on the plan. The gas station will, while not directly located in the the baseball field, is part of this project that allows the preservation of the Babe Ruth baseball field. And the inclusion of commercial tenants like Royal Farms in the Gibbons Commons campus makes that type of operation possible. This is consistent with the city's master plan by providing additional employment opportunities, as well as providing the availability of services, gas, and convenience store items to those who live and work in the area. In addition, under Transform Baltimore, the C2 zoning district that this will become allows gas stations as a conditional use as well, so this isn't something that's going away in the future. We're not located in an urban renewal area, and the use of the property as a gas station is consistent with the purposes of the zoning code, including the intent of encouraging the most appropriate use of land in the city. In terms of the findings the board has to make, that the establishment of the gas station will not be detrimental to or endanger public health. And we haven't seen anything that really talks about the gas station. Everything seems to relate to the convenience store aspect of it. And we believe that the public health is served, public welfare is served by having this development, the Gibbons Commons campus generally, but including the Royal Farms parcel, which will provide goods and services to both the St. Agnes community as well as to the local neighborhood association. The use is not precluded by any other law, including urban renewal plans. It's not contrary to the public interest. It represents over $3 million in capital investment, privately funded, the creation of approximately 45 jobs as well as 75 construction jobs. And it is, as I said, in harmony with the purpose and intent of the zoning code. So with that, we'll turn it over to the community or the opposition, and I'd like to reserve the right to respond to anything they may have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm Natasha Box-Singleton. I'm the Vice President of the Violetville and St. Agnes Community Association. I'm also here representing the communities of Gwynns Falls and Oakley. For several years, we've been in contact with a gentleman by the name of William Greskovich, who presented himself to our community association as a representative of St. Agnes. and was to provide updates on the Royal Farm store and gas station. At the time when he initially provided that information, the gas station and store were to be much smaller. It was still in the planning stages. It was not a definite happening, and it was to be located at the corner of Wilkins Avenue. And what would that be? Is that Georgetown? No, the northwest corner as opposed to the southeast corner.
Okay.
We continued our communications with Bill. As recently as last December, we saw him in person, and he told us there was no movement on the Royal Farms issue. Obviously, our community was very interested in it. We had one representative, a treasurer, kind of jump the gun and write a letter that supported the Royal Farms several years ago, and he wrote that to Bill at Bill's request. And we wanted to make sure that we had the information available to give to our residents, because we did have concerns, obviously, about the chicken, bringing that into our neighborhood. We also had concerns about the impact to our local businesses. We have 2 gas stations that are within a walkable distance from St. Agnes. They're both locally owned, they're both family run, they both employ residents. Both of these gas stations have been in the community for decades, and both of these gas stations actively support activities within the community. So we wanted to make sure that we were aware of any changes or updates that were happening with the Royal Farms. We did receive from Kyle Leggs a notification last January that this proposal was coming to the hearing. It was a surprise to us. We had no information from Bill. We had no information from anyone at St. Agnes, and we were expecting to be part of this communication because we represent 4 communities that are surrounding this property. We were able to meet with Caroline, and she did come to our meeting on March 1st. We presented about a dozen questions and asked for an opportunity to have a discussion where we might come up with an alternative that would financially support St. Agnes's goals and would also support the goal of the community, which is to obviously be a healthier community and to support our existing businesses. We don't want to exacerbate the food desert that's in Gwynns Falls right now by providing another establishment that provides only fried food, expensive prepackaged fruits and salads, and cigarettes. We don't want to harm any of our local businesses that currently provide food or gas and have been in our residential areas for several decades. So we had the expectation that after we presented these questions, we would have additional dialogue at our next community meeting, which was last Wednesday. Unfortunately, we did not get a call back from Caroline's office until the day after the community meeting. And then, of course, when we looked on the docket, we saw that this was scheduled for today. As a community, we have reached out to the CEO of St. Agnes, and he seemed very agreeable to have an open conversation about what type of establishment could go in that place instead of a Royal Farms. Not that we are discounting your business, but we feel that in our community, we can do better. We have a very disparate community. We've got a lot of diversity. We have a lot of well-educated, well-funded families, and then we have families that aren't as well-educated and aren't as well-funded and aren't able to make those choices as people like Carolyn are able to make. We'd like to help everybody. We would like to help our businesses and those families. And we would like to have at least a month or 2 to continue that conversation with the CEO of St. Agnes instead of having this pushed on us.
Sir?
My name is Jay Key, and I'm actually a resident of the Gwynns Falls neighborhood.
Can you spell your last name, sir?
K-E-I.
And it was Jay.
Yes, J-A-Y. I have no further testimony other than I just wanted to say that we really would like to have a little bit more healthier lifestyle choices other than just dirty gas and dirty food. You know, we really need to have some more healthier options besides that. And thank you.
Okay. Did either of you I guess have any besides the food selection that's offered at the store, were there any objections based on anything more than that?
Yes. The community as a whole has several objections, and they were outlined in that January letter. As a community, we have been engaging the panhandlers at that intersection to pick up the trash that's left. A lot of that trash is dropped by St. Agnes employees as they come in and out of the parking lot, and it litters the sidewalks. We actually pay them with donations from the community. We monitor them, we get them into wraparound services, and they clean that area of St. Agnes's property so that it's not dirty when we come home to our community. We worry that adding a convenience store with cigarette packages, with chip packages, with soda bottles is going to add even more litter to that area. We also worry about security. As you have rightly noted, that Royal Farms that's on Wilkins Avenue has been robbed several times. The Royal Farms that's on Washington Boulevard in Morrell Park has been robbed several times at gunpoint and at knife point. The Royal Farms that's on Washington Boulevard in Lansdowne has been robbed several times at gunpoint and at knife point. The other Royal Farms that's on Washington Boulevard next to Carroll Park has been robbed several times at knife point and at gunpoint. We don't want that in our community. As we outlined, there seems to be an issue with Royal Farms. We have a 7-Eleven that's not robbed as often as Royal Farms is. Occasionally, they do have someone come in off the highway, and they have someone indicate that they have a gun and walk away. Royal Farms is robbed weekly in that area, and we don't want to bring that into our community. We work very closely with the Southwest District Police Chief, and we understand that there is a knowledge out there that Royal Farms is a target. The way that their stores are set up, the way that they're manned, and the way that they're lit means that they are a target. We also look at Royal Farms down Patapsco Boulevard. There are two. One was recently built, and one was built a few years ago and is now closed. We don't want to see that in our neighborhood. We don't want to see a store built and then closed and left empty. We also don't want to see gas tanks sunk into the ground in a watershed restoration area. That was a Army Corps of Engineers project on the Seton Keogh grounds that's going to be directly adjacent to where they want to sink those gas tanks. When they originally proposed the gas station, it was on the opposite corner, which was much further away from that watershed restoration project and much further away from the Gwynns Falls tributary. Those are our additional concerns. We do obviously have concerns about traffic and the widening of the road because that will mean even less green space right there. And we have concerns, as we said, about the food.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir?
I wanted to say one more thing. It just seems like that whenever there's a parcel that Royal Farms just seems to want to anti-competitively come in and just, do it for, take over for no other other opportunities can get there, like a Panera Bread or, whatever could be there. I don't know why I'm nervous, but I think that it just shows just very unsustainable practices that they are, economically and financial practices as well as environmental practices. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Hecker.
Very briefly, by and large, the concerns that we've heard today relate really to the operation of the convenience store, not to the gas station, which is what we're here on. The convenience store is allowed by right, and we wouldn't be here if all we were doing was the convenience store. We did hear, just at the end there, a comment about the gas tanks. I will say that Royal Farms is fully compliant with all of the state, federal, and local regulations regarding the gas tanks. And all of the plans have been or will be approved by all of the appropriate regulatory agencies in that regard. We've heard a concern about competition with other existing gas stations, and the fact that a Royal Farms might compete with other gas stations certainly is not a reason to deny the application. But the other concerns that we've heard really relate only to the operation of the convenience store aspect, which again is not what we're here for today. We've heard nothing to demonstrate that the inherent adverse effects of the gas station at this location will be worse here than they would be somewhere else. In fact, this is really a great site to have a gas station. It's located on a busy commercial corridor. There's ample space there to provide enough traffic circulation and parking and a nice landscape buffer and comply with the stormwater requirements without interfering with other uses or businesses or anything in that area. We are doing certain traffic improvements to facilitate access in and out of the site in connection with the larger Cardinal Gibbons project. And so we don't believe that there are going to be any inherently adverse effects of the gas station at this particular location.
To their point, was there a a point in time when the gas station was oriented more along, I guess, Wilkins Avenue than along.
There was originally in, I want to say 2012 or so, right after St. Agnes acquired the property, the original proposed location for the Royal Farms was at the intersection of Wilkins and DeSoto Road on the really catty corner side of the property. That changed not long after St. Agnes got into the master planning process. We realized that really wasn't the best location for that type of use. The Bon Secours project was going to go right next to it up along DeSoto Road, and we began rethinking where the Royal Farms would be located. We ended up at this side of the site along Caton Avenue. Ms. Box-Singleton is correct that Mr. Greskovich, who had been with St. Agnes, had been in charge of reaching out to the community. And there was obviously a gap in communication when he left St. Agnes. And we tried to reach out to the people who St. Agnes had in their file as being the appropriate community representatives, but we fully acknowledged that there was a gap in our communication with them. We certainly didn't intend to go forward with the original hearing in January without having met with the community, but and in fact, when we arrived here that day and met Ms. Box-Singleton, we realized that we needed to postpone because there were people who were interested and we needed to have the opportunity to meet with them, which we did in March. But the net result of that meeting was that they don't want to see a Royal Farms here. They'd rather see a Panera or a Whole Foods or a Trader Joe's, and they would like us to postpone this hearing or cancel the hearing to go back to St. Agnes and try to negotiate with St. Agnes to have a different tenant here. And that's really not part of the plan. I mean, St. Agnes has an agreement with Royal Farms. Royal Farms is excited about going here. We're here on an application for a Royal Farms, not some other type of use at this location. And so we don't necessarily think that a postponement of the hearing to have those kinds of discussions would be productive. But that's how we ended up here today.
Okay. Any questions?
No.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay. 2017-47, 509 through 513 South Broadway. Stephen Fogelman. Yeah.
I think they're coming in.
Yeah.
All right, good afternoon again.
Afternoon.
We'll try to keep this as short as we can. It's
All right.
Look, is it possible, I'm gonna make an unusual request, is it possible for me to make one sentence into the record in the 1606 Thames Street case that we had? My client had an issue.
Not
All right.
now.
Very well, thank you. I'll proceed.
We have this case down as an application to use the first floor and mezzanine for restaurant and tavern with live entertainment and dancing and outdoor table service. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, if all those intending to give testimony can raise their right hands and be sworn, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right. Do we have staff reports?
We do. We received a letter on March 13, 2017 from the Fells Point Resident Association's president, Mr. Martz, in opposition of the proposal, which I'm sure he can elaborate on momentarily. On April 11th, 2017, we received a letter from the Fells Point Task Force with Delegate Learman's letterhead voicing their opposition to the proposal due to the lack of explicit evidence that the proposal will benefit the aggregate community. And lastly, we received another letter from the Upper Fells Point Improvement Association that reinforces the Fells Point Task Force opposition, highlighting issues such as the proposed size and adverse effects that it would have on the surrounding neighborhood.
Thank you. Planning Department reviewed this application. Noted that this property is in the Fells Point Historic District, and any possible exterior changes to this property as a consequence of this hearing would be subject to the requirements of the Fells Point Historic District as far as authorization to proceed. Separately, the department reviewed the specifics of the application with regard to the live entertainment and noted that there was not a specific off-street parking plan. The application's only stated provision of valet parking and vouchers for parking reimbursement at area public parking garages or parking lots. And the department felt that given the demand for off-street parking in this area during tourist-intensive months, it would be more appropriate for the applicant to offer greater details about arrangements for patron parking. The sidewalk outdoor table service area was acceptable, but it should be redrawn, the sidewalk site plan itself, to show the specific placement of a specific number of tables and seats within the designated seating area, as this was not specified in the application that the department reviewed. The department recommends that approval of this application be subject to these conditions, in addition to any conditions the board may establish. For live entertainment, off-street parking for patrons of live entertainment must be provided pursuant to a detailed parking plan approved by the board. A copy of the use and occupancy permit for the premises must be kept on the premises and available for inspection by representatives of Baltimore City at all times. A copy of the written approval by the board of the live entertainment provided on the premises, including details of any restrictions or limitations on live entertainment provided, must be kept on the premises and available for inspection by representatives of Baltimore City at all times. And a copy of all other permits and licenses required pursuant to the written approval of the board must be kept on the premises and available for inspection by representatives of Baltimore City at all times. For outdoor table service, a minimum of 8 feet of the sidewalk must remain clear and unobstructed for pedestrian use. The capacity of the outdoor seating area should be not more than 5 tables and 20 patrons. Tables should be limited to those that seat 4 patrons and are to be kept against the wall of the building. There will be no outdoor bar, no outdoor music, jukebox, or other form of entertainment, and all patrons must be seated for dining and served by wait staff. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and Mr. Fogelman, are those conditions stated by the planning department acceptable to you?
They are. Thank you.
Okay, please proceed.
All right, thank you. We're here on 509 at 13 South Broadway. It probably doesn't need an introduction, but if you're unfamiliar, it used to be the Latin Palace. And it's a large property in a commercial district in a beautiful neighborhood. That property has begun to decay, unfortunately. It wasn't kept up over the years, and there along comes Kimberly Burgos, my client, who wishes to open a restaurant in the facility. The facility, I believe Mr. Rivadeneira, when he was the landlord, he had it at 600 capacity. That capacity, Ms. Burgos is planning to do a build-out, and that capacity would be somewhere between 500 and 600 people, so it would be a similar size establishment. Ms. Burgos has provided floor plan for your review here today. I'd like to add one to the file, and if anyone would like a courtesy copy of the floor plan, I have that at this time. Thank you very much. Would any of the members or Mr. Chairman like a copy of the floor plan? Sure.
Thanks.
Can we get one more?
Absolutely. Mr. Barb?
Sure. Thank you.
And while we're doing that, I may as well hand you second exhibit for the file, which is the proposed egress and proposed fire escape routes for the building. Thank you. And if anyone would like a courtesy copy of the fire routes for this building. Mr. Chairman has one in his hand if you all would like a fire escape route exhibit going once. All right, here we go.
BURGOS.
And the first name, you might want to spell that too.
Yes, it's KEMBELY. Yes.
All right, and Ms. Burgos is a Baltimore City resident. She has restaurant experience, both as a cook, restaurant management, and most recently, for the last 4 years, as the general manager of a nightclub with 1,200 capacity here in the city of Baltimore that's located closer to where I live in Canton, called Euphoria. However, her dream has been to have a restaurant, and this facility is a beautiful diamond in the rough, quite frankly. So she put together a menu, put together a concept. That concept clearly involves live entertainment with a capacity of this nature. Now, the prior MOU that had been worked out between the then tenant and the community associations strictly limited live entertainment. For example, limiting capacity in the building to 200 persons whenever live entertainment was conducted. Now, when you see the size of this place, to ask a business owner to chop in half or more your customers just because you're happy to have live entertainment, it seems a little self-defeating, quite frankly. Nevertheless, you know, the applicant understands the concerns of the community, and I don't know what more an applicant can do. This is a big building, and it's frightening to some folks in the community because of its size and because of its prior history. However, Ms. Burgos is committed to a restaurant, and that is a requirement by law, because the only liquor license that would be able to be put into that establishment is a Class B restaurant license, which requires 51% food receipts. I have a copy of the menu. It's a test menu. It's very large. Anyone can read it. Thank you.
We need a bigger file cabinet.
And it folds nicely. Thank God. Thank you. And finally, a dessert menu and some conceptual photos of the establishment. Good stuff. So, in that regard, Ms. Burgos cannot operate and will not put the $500,000 requisite investment into the property without some kind of amendment of the current terms of the MOU. And that would require live entertainment 7 nights a week. Live entertainment in varying forms, from violinists and pianists. Oops. From violinists and pianists to full rock bands. The proposal or the application is requested live entertainment 7 days a week throughout their operation. This is an operation that plans to be open 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. 7 days a week, and in some form or another, whether in all forms. This establishment would probably attempt to have a number of types of live entertainment. And so that's why all the boxes were checked. Everything from a disc jockey to a band to a possible magic act to just about anything you can mention. And she believes it's critical for her business mission to address those requirements before making this significant investment. They've already made a significant investment in the property. And I've quite frankly told them to slow it down, but that's a little too late. But there's a long way to go, probably $450,000 in capital investment to go to bring this building into the repair to succeed as a restaurant. Ms. Burgos is committed to this project. This project will be financed through her family, through her uncle. And she is open to, I'm going to let her speak for a minute. And I know Mr. March is going to want to speak. We have visited the Fells Point Community Organization and the Fells Point Residents Association. And I'll let Mr. March discuss what happened there. At this time, I believe that economic development is going to have to occur on that building. I think even Mr. March agrees on that. The question is, what is it going to be? And he knows, and we talked a year ago. My client's been looking at different tenants, and I understand the community's concerns. It's probably one of the best neighborhoods in Baltimore. Something's got to give. Something's got to go there. And this big vacant is a big eyesore in Fells Point. And I believe Ms. Burgos could fill a role in that community. She has, I believe she presented it to Fells Point Residents Association, but an operations plan as far as security. And I'll just go ahead and steal some of your words here. But they're prepared to have 12 full-time security staff there. That is 1 per 50 customers. Ms. Burgos is from New York, and she looked into what is protocol for security standards. The New York City Police Department says 1 per 75 customers. For example, the San Francisco Police Department says 1 per 100 customers, but for every 5 security guards, you have to have a security supervisor, so 6 for 500. In this case, she wants to have more than double the security guards that other cities use as a benchmark. And quite frankly, as a restaurant, she doesn't want to have this beefed up security, but she knows that the only way to allay the concerns of the community and to maintain public order at all times is to establish a baseline, so that she unfortunately must plan security-wise that she's going to have a big concert every night, even if she's not, because of the massive capacity of this enterprise. And speaking of that, as I mentioned, she has managed a club that is twice the capacity, one of the larger, certainly one of the larger capacities in Southeast Baltimore. And with it, there have been some problems along the way, but quite frankly, small problems for a very large club. There was a citation for disorderly patrons upon exit on at least one occasion. They've worked with the Southeastern District to ameliorate the enormous problems that always occur when a lot of clubs let out at the same time. She's learned a lot in that experience managing that massive enterprise. And quite frankly, with the food requirement, this would be a step back for her. This is in her wheelhouse, and she hopes to serve dinner for the citizens of Baltimore. Is there anything else before we that you'd like to personally say?
Well, I would like to be given the opportunity to maybe work on this project. It's my dream. It's something that I really want to do. I have lots of experience, like Mr. Fogelman said. I'm willing to work with the community, and I do understand their concerns. However, I don't feel like it's something that we can't work on. Like he said, we have a plan. We have a security plan in place. And it's not my intention to come in and disrupt the community. I feel like this will be an asset to the community instead. And really, that's all I have to say. Hopefully we can work with the community if they're willing to. We can work around their concerns. And with the parking situation, we can work with the public parking nearby and maybe give our customers free parking ballots, because that was a big concern at the community. So we do know and understand that they're concerned, but we're also willing to work with them in this situation if they're willing to.
And Ms. Burgos has identified the garage at Fleet and Eden, at Caroline, and the other public parking facilities. She has been in negotiations with a transportation company about the idea of providing shuttle service from the restaurant to those garages. When we presented to the communities, at least one community association, didn't think that was necessarily a solution. But they're always open to trying to minimize the disruption of parking and traffic in the neighborhood, and that includes valet parking. Additionally, they are set to enter into a contract with Waste Management to provide daily trash pickup with plastic bins that will be kept inside the restaurant until an hour or two before the scheduled trash pickup. Additionally, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. You get your parking, security, and that's effectively what we have. But she has a neat menu. I mean, she plans on hiring at least 20 food-related people, including sushi chefs, a chef from New York City. Other than that, she will be hiring 100% locally here from Baltimore City.
And also, with the BMU that is, that's supposed to be followed now, it's just basically setting up for failure, because if you have a capacity of 600 and it's reduced to 2 something, then that leaves you with like no way out. I mean, with my project, that'll be just setting up for failure if I accept the BMU, so.
So let me see if I can get this correctly, Mr. Fogelman. Are you, I guess there's I recall that there was a prior case involving live entertainment in a restaurant at this location. And there was an agreement there between the property owner and the community association, whereby the community association agreed to the conditional use approval and the operator agreed to conditions which were desired by the community association. Do you envision that in this case the board would be amending that agreement?
No, we're asking for the removal of those restrictions from the zoning resolution, from the UNO.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a technical question. The floor plans show the building kind of wraps around in the rear over to Eastern Avenue. And this portion here is really a separate lot than the main portion. Is this existing?
Yes, it is.
So it's been operating?
It's the second floor, that exit. It's like an exit
Both
to Eastern
the second
Avenue.
and first floor
Yes.
that you intend to use?
Yes.
And that's the way it has been used?
Yes.
So, we processed the application based on one lot. I think we just need to amend it to make sure that we don't create problems in the future if this is approved, so that we cover both properties. I don't know if they're owned by the same owner.
They are.
And if they could be consolidated, it would probably solve a lot of problems. But
Definitely.
I just wanted to point it out now so that we don't run into problems in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Tanner.
Sir?
Actually, we've been here a few times before regarding this address, and the problems are still the same problem. It's the overall capacity, which is actually 652 people. And to have a venue like that, and I'm calling it a venue, I would equate it to a mini Ram's Head Live that says they serve food. And that would be dangerous for our neighborhood. And our organization is opposed to removing the restrictions as they are placed on the building. We find them reasonable, and actually the board found them reasonable to have them placed on the building and go into an MOU with the previous tenant. I'm just really, really reluctant to remove those restrictions. I don't want to see the building stay vacant, but those restrictions are there for a purpose, and that's to restrict the overall occupancy and not disturb the rest of the neighborhood. I mean, if we're talking about rock bands or DJs, yeah, it'll probably be successful, but the residents surrounding that will pay the price. And that's primarily why I'm here, is to actually, a restaurant would be fine there, but I don't think with a capacity of more than 125 people. And if she can't make money with that capacity, then why put it on the neighborhood to, make her profitable in running what we see will probably meld into a music venue. And that's why I'm here to oppose it.
Okay.
No, respect Mr. Martz's opinion. I want to point out to the board that that those, if you may have some memory of this, that Mr. Rivadeneira, who was the former tenant of the Latin Palace, he worked out his MOU based on a boxing venue, based on a place that had fights. And that's a pretty unique business plan. So the way it is now, it's designed to attract a boxing crowd rather than a musical crowd. And in fact, they limited the number of times annually you could have a live band in that facility. And I mean, Cat's Eye, little places don't have to only have one band a month. So it really was a very custom fit MOU that may have worked for Mr. Rivadeneira, although maybe not, since he went out of business just a couple of months later after that MOU. But it's sort of a vestige that it's going to be hard to find somebody who can squeeze into that MOU and make this work. And it's almost incongruous for a business owner to be told, sure, here's the keys to your new place. You can only use 1/3 of it most of the time, though. So that's why we're here. Thank you.
Sir?
Excuse me. My name is Mundell Powell. I'm a resident, the closest impacted resident to the establishment. My property runs adjacent to the property that Mr. Tanner was asking questions about. A lot of you may remember that I testified in the cases involving Mr. Rivadeneira and the Latin Palace. I'm also a business owner there in Harbor East. I own a restaurant, and I would be the last person to want to, step on somebody's dream. But the reality is that there's not a market for a 650 seat restaurant anywhere in this city. It's unsustainable. I can tell you the challenges of sustaining a 100-seat restaurant. It's unsustainable, and it will inevitably become a music venue, a club such as Euphoria, with the requisite problems that brings. So, as the closest impacted resident, I strongly oppose this. We dealt with 12 years of Mr. Rivadeneira and his music venue. It wasn't a boxing venue, it was a music venue. And it was unbearable. And that's what I see it becoming again with this plan. So that's my testimony.
And just very briefly, sir, you're aware that Mr. Rivadeneira didn't exactly go by the book. At some point, he was hosting or serving alcohol illegally and having live entertainment without the liquor board's
permission.
permission.
Numerous illegal things.
Yeah.
And that was in an effort to sustain himself. And a venue this size is very hard to sustain as a restaurant. You can't do it. There's not one in the city.
And I'm not.
Tell me one.
And I'm not saying I do it with my money, but the question is, if somebody has the money and they want to try it, do they get a chance? So.
But invariably, if it turns to a music venue, a club with negative impacts upon the community.
And you're aware that Euphoria doesn't even have a kitchen, right? So it is sort of a different animal.
We have to, excuse me, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but we have to sell food in order to stay open. I just want to specify that.
I have a Class B liquor license myself, and I know the restrictions, okay? 51% of food. I'm aware of that. And I can again tell you that it's difficult to sustain even a 100-seat restaurant, let alone a 650-seat restaurant.
I don't disagree with this.
So, with that being said, I envision this turning into a music venue, a nightclub, and that would negatively impact the community. Not just myself, who wouldn't be able to habitate the rear of his home for another 12 years or however long that business operates. But it would impact the overall community, parking, crime, any number of areas. So,
Were you satisfied with Mr. Rivadeneira's security at his facility?
no, I was not. And again, I question the need for a 12-member security team for a restaurant. Why the need?
Well, quite candidly, and I mentioned it earlier, it's because of the size that they agreed to put out a full security force, just in case, because things do happen sometimes, lightning strikes. And if you've got 500 people and you've got 3 security guards, you have a problem. Wouldn't you agree with me there?
I would agree.
Yeah.
But if it's a restaurant, that eliminates a lot of those problems, but it's not going to be a restaurant.
We'll have to
You and I
we'll
know
have to agree to
that.
differ on
You and I know that. I mean, you represent a number of people, large restaurants,
small
and
guys.
whatnot in the city. You know that that's not what it's going to be.
It's tough. It's somebody's dream, and it is a
And again,
tough business in
I
general.
would be the last person to want to step on somebody's dream. I just want the peaceful enjoyment of the home that I purchased, okay? And not to be negatively impacted, not to come home at, 1 a.m. in the morning after closing my restaurant and not be able to find a parking spot because the valet plan that was presented isn't being utilized. Parking garages that you're saying are going to be utilized aren't being utilized, just as Latin Palace didn't adhere to their valet parking plan. It's not going to happen.
Well, were we able to enter into an MOU with an association, we certainly would have included that valet parking plan and their operations plan. And they're very interested in providing valet parking. And this is the problem sometimes when you go to a neighborhood like Fells Point and you have more than one association, you'll get feedback from one that might be at odds with the other. And let's face it, valet parking is a football. I mean, it sounds great, but then until you live 2 or 3 blocks away and you're parking in front of my house. So does it solve the problem? I don't know the answer at the end of the day. So they were told at the Fells Point Community Organization, oh, this valet parking is terrible. And so they think, well, maybe we need to do shuttles and get people to the restaurant that way. It's not easy. I mean, it's hard to figure out how to stick 600 people in a Fells Point. I'm the first to admit that. Somehow, Rivadeneira did it, and did it with some problems. And that's why we're hoping that these applicants would, with a more professional plan, would be able to come in and operate. But I understand. Thank you.
Anything?
No, thank you. And thank you for being here today, Mr. Martz. And thank you.
All right, thank you all. Do you need these back?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a great afternoon.
Take care. All right. And, yeah. 2017-71, 2075 through 2085 Woodbourne Avenue, Jessica Bingham. Ms. Bingham, we have this as an application to install new rooftop telecommunications facility consisting of 9 antennas and support equipment and equipment cabinet in the main electrical room of a multi-family detached dwelling. Is that correct?
That's correct, although it's actually 8 antennas, not 9.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. And with that change, can all those intending to give testimony please raise their right hands and be sworn, please?
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Do we have staff reports?
We do. BMZA does have a letter from the Harborough Community Association voicing their opposition. However, since the author of that letter is present, he will articulate his justification for his opposition momentarily.
Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property is adjacent to the, excuse me, Herring Run Park, which does provide a certain amount of buffering for this property in relation to possibly nearby residential areas. It's also separated from residential areas on the other side of Herring Parkway. The department recommends that approval of this application be subject to these conditions. The antennas and related equipment must be painted to match the building to ensure they are visually unobtrusive. Panel antennas and related equipment will remain mounted as illustrated in the plans and elevations submitted to the Planning Department, and the applicant will adequately mitigate any adverse effect as specified in the report of the Historical and Architectural Preservation Division of the Department of Planning in accordance with that report's recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Bingham, are those conditions stated by the Planning Department acceptable to you?
Yes, they are.
All right. And if you can proceed and tell the board what's being proposed here.
T-Mobile has proposed to install a rooftop telecommunications site on an apartment building. They are proposing 8 antennas. Those antennas are proposed in the specific location that they are at in order to provide for something called shadowing to not occur so that the radio signals don't ultimately simply bounce off the roof. They're proposing those antennas to increase public safety with E911 services. They're proposing those antennas as well simply to increase coverage, to increase service to the area. There's quite a demand for data and for extra capacity in the networks nowadays as data usage increases. So that is why they have chosen this location.
Okay. There we go. All right, so these would go like about 11, 12 feet.
Yes, so the main roof is 24 feet, and then there's a parapet that extends another 2.5 feet above that. So the antennas have to clear the parapet in order to provide service to the surrounding area. So they will be mounted at a level of 31.5 feet, and then they extend on either end above and below that rad center.
Okay, got it. It's extending up.
So they will extend up to 35.5
Yeah.
above ground level.
All right. And they're all going to be located alongside of the building that's along Echodale. Is that correct?
Yes, they will all be located on the one building that's along Echodale. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any questions at this point? We'll turn to your opposition.
I'm Mia Blum, Secretary of the Hamilton Hills Neighborhood Association. We were not approached by the organization prior to the letter for submitting the proposal, and we are opposed to building. This is the southwestern gateway of our community, and we do not want to have this as a site.
You do not want to have what?
We don't want to have this apartment building as a site for antenna.
Okay. Was there any particular reason why?
Well, there are other locations nearby, so Morgan State has a garage nearby that could serve as well. So this is a very small apartment complex, about 3 stories tall, about 3 buildings, and having the antenna on top would just pose a real concern for us as far as it being the gateway to our organization.
Okay. And is it is your concern centered upon any safety issues, architectural issues, so where it's the genesis of the opposition, or what's the nature of the opposition?
Sure. So it is inconsistent with the architecture that it currently exists for the building, and the design of the area. There aren't any structures nearby that look similar to this.
Okay, so you're concerned about how it would sort of appear from an aesthetic standpoint as people go, I guess it's north there
Yes, sir.
on Perry.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Hilliard.
Similar issues. I would note that the antennas will extend almost 10 feet above the roof. This is the gateway for the Hamilton Hills Neighborhood Association. There is a small median on Echodale in the community, along with the city, constructed a sign and a gateway garden at that location. So what you now have as a gateway to the community is 3-story garden apartments on one side of the gateway. With the installation of these antennas, you would have a number of antennas over 10 feet tall extending over the height of the building, which would significantly detract from the gateway and the aesthetics of the area. Thank you.
Sir.
They pretty much covered my concerns.
Okay, if you can just come forward and state your name for the record.
John Fowler, resident, Hamilton Hills.
All right, Ms. Bingham?
I, first of all, want to be clear that the antennas are no more than 96.5 inches. They're not going to be 10 foot. They're going to be approximately 8-foot antennas. They have to go that height, unfortunately, in order to service the area. If we attempted to move them any lower, the radio signals would bounce off the roof. It would not provide service to the area. Approximately 70% of calls nowadays to 911 are made through cell phones. So for public safety reasons, it's really important that service is provided in all areas. And this was a site that was kind of noted by T-Mobile as lacking in some of the coverage that's needed to service their customers. They also have to clear the parapet on top of the roof. And the apartment building is located along Echodale Road, which is quite a busy road, I believe. I'm just not quite sure that there's going to be a huge visible impact along a busy road.
I think one of the witnesses spoke of a desire for the antennas to be located on a taller structure, such as a parking garage. Did you consider any alternative sites?
T-Mobile considered any site that would service the area that they were attempting to cover and determined that this was the best site to meet all their needs. And they do also have support of the building ownership, which has already signed a lease agreement with them in support of this.
Any further? All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Correct, that's it. One more. 4. Aha, that's right.
Oh, yeah. Still people here.
2017-104, 1408 Jackson Street. You, Mr. Brown?
Yes.
All right. We have this as an application to construct a 2-story rear addition with new 3rd floor with rear and rooftop decks and lower level rear garage. Is that correct?
The garage part is incorrect. Per the plans, you can see. I'm not sure why it's written there. I brought it up earlier with a member of the board. Yeah, it's just not on the plan. I'm not sure where that came from, the garage.
Okay. So then it's an application to construct a 2-story rear addition, new 3rd floor with rear and rooftop decks.
Correct. It is going to be graded out in the back for a parking pad, but I don't know if that's part of this or not.
Okay. I just needed to get the description.
Oh, yes.
Okay, good. If everyone can, if all those intending to give testimony can raise their right hands and be sworn, please.
swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes.
Do we have staff reports?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Brown, why don't you tell us a bit about what is being proposed here?
So the plan is basically similar to a plan that recently was done on the same block, the 1414 Jackson Street, so just a few houses up.
Just so you know that each case that we consider is different, so.
Sure.
It's not just, well, it was proved here, so I want that, so.
Yeah, totally understood. I'm just saying that's where the basis came from when we purchased this property. You know, I live and work in the city. I have a family, growing family. My wife's 8 3/4 months pregnant, we'll say. So she couldn't attend with me today, and I also have a 3-year-old son. And I've lived in Baltimore City, in South Baltimore, for the last 8 years on Fort Avenue. And we've just kind of outgrown that current house. And we looked for a long time to try to find something that would fit our needs. And this property with these adjustments would be something that would fit our needs. So we purchased it with the understanding that, you know, we would be able to make these changes. You know, we carefully chose our contractor. He's John Bolster of New Renaissance, who's been a staple of South Baltimore for over 20 years. You know, we did attempt to speak with the neighbors and kind of address any concerns, you know, including one with the neighbors at 1410, where they asked us not to put the air conditioning units on the roof. And I worked that out with the contractor, and we've kind of moved on from that. In the end, you know, I think we just couldn't find something that worked for both everyone's needs and my needs of the growing family and the space we need interiorly. You know, in the spirit of being a good neighbor, I've already contacted 311 regarding inspection and trimming of the tree located directly in front of the house, which I believe will help kind of alleviate some concern of harbor view, which I believe, you know, is kind of the reason we're here. We also plan to add both front and rear security cameras to help promote the safety and security of our block. You know, we've been good neighbors. We shovel snow for entire blocks. We rake leaves for entire blocks. We care about our neighbors and, you know, not only ourselves. I grew up in Cecil County, so I'm familiar with the, you know, farm country and the rights of the property owner, including the right to farm ordinances, which I know doesn't directly apply here, but some of the same, you know, legality kind of spills over. But I am sympathetic to my neighbors. I also just want to do what is right by law on my own property. You know, the home will not be an eyesore, but an enhancement to the community and to the property values surrounding. I've been insured by my contractor and architect, who is Justin Cito of Cito Architects, that the average grade height will be less than the 35 feet zoning allowance. So we're kind of making a little concession there. We're also not doing a stairs penthouse and are keeping the rear setback at 25 feet. In conclusion, I'm not an investor. I'm not a house flipper. I'm just looking for something that fits the needs of my family. And we're just trying to exercise our rights as property owners. We're not asking to go above and beyond those rights, and are just basing the plans on a recent precedent, which I know doesn't necessarily apply, but that's what we had in mind when we bought the property. Thank you.
Okay. Just looking at the drawings, I think it's an existing 2-story row house.
That's correct.
Okay, and so I guess the current height of the second floor goes up to just under 20 feet.
Yes.
And then when we get to...
There is a grade, I will say, as well, just the
Yes.
front's graded. Okay.
Yes, I live a couple blocks down.
Okay.
So, and I did a renovation of my own house, just similar to this, so I know all about it. But noting that there's, that the height there, I guess it says 36 feet, 6 inches.
That's correct, but the average grade will be below the 35-foot zoning allowance, which is what I was told, and forgive me if I'm wrong, that is the important part, the average grade?
Yes, well, I'm trying to figure out what the measurements are.
Okay.
So it's going up here and says 36 feet 6 inches. But yet I see that that line is above the actual roof line.
Correct, yes. Yeah, we discussed this, and Justin brought up that, he brought up the 36.6, which I guess, he didn't explain it, I'm sorry, so I don't have a great explanation for you there. I know that we talked about the average grade being below 35 feet in the end.
Okay. And then the deck obviously is going to come up, I guess the surface of the deck obviously comes up above that.
Correct, yes. I talked about putting the deck in the front potentially, which would alleviate some concerns. But because of the 8-foot ordinance from the front, that kind of just kills a lot of the interior space that we were looking to have out-of-town relatives over and various other things.
If you put it towards the front?
Correct, yes, because you have to be offset 8 foot, is that correct?
Yeah, there's an 8-foot setback, sure.
Okay.
But you lost me there when you were talking about losing interior space.
Well, because of the 8-foot setback and because the deck has to be a certain size to have the stairs to go up to the next level, then we're then taking that away from interior space.
Okay. Although
Yeah, just let me jump in. I think what he's talking about is actually flipping the top layout around, so
Yeah.
the deck that's now in the back would actually be in the front.
Gotcha.
Right, yes, sorry if I did not explain that well, thank you.
No, yeah.
And who are you?
Sorry, my name's Walker Matthews. I'm a resident at 1410 Jackson, the neighbor.
I just need your name. Thank you. All right. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay.
I'll jump in. As I said, Walker Matthews. Jen and I live at 1410 Jackson, the immediate neighbor, on the south side of 1408. So why that's important is because our waterfront view off of our deck, which was the primary reason why we purchased our home 6 months ago, would be totally impeded by a full third story build. And we actually brought several pictures just to take a look at it. Probably gives you the best interpretation of what we're talking about. Yep. Zach's right. We've kind of gone back and forth a little bit, talking about different options that could play in here. The first thing we were thinking of was just what we had talked about before, actually switching the third floor layout so that his third floor deck is at the front, gives him a waterfront view off his third floor deck, doesn't have those dormers that extend all the way out to the front of his house, which would block our entire view, which actually looks slightly left onto the water, just like everybody else on that block. So we were hoping that would be a solution, but then obviously the 8-foot offset really cuts that into his, the master or the other interior space up there. So that's an issue. So we've been going back and forth trying to figure out a solution, but Jen and I are here to talk about, how this would really devalue our property. I mean, in that neighborhood, and I'm sure you know, Mr. Chairman. What's that? Yeah, Mr. Chairman, in that neighborhood, rooftop decks are a big part of that culture, and it's a big reason for an add value to your home. That's why we purchased our home 6 months ago, for that reason. So to have that be in jeopardy just 6 months into our purchase, and really at any time throughout our home ownership there, would give us pause. So that's why we're really trying to work with Zach to figure out a solution that gives him what he needs, but also allows us to keep the better part of that huge add value to our property.
Okay. How tall is your house?
So our house is...
You have 2 stories or 3?
We have 2 stories.
Okay.
With a third-story loft that leads out to the deck. Like a penthouse.
Yeah, in the back.
Just one at a time.
Sorry.
Your name again, ma'am?
I'm Jennifer Reed, R-E-I-D.
Okay.
And it's a 2-story with a third floor loft that's in the back that opens out onto the deck.
Okay. I think I know which house that is.
All right.
Okay, so it's like it's almost like a partial, really
third story.
popular, yeah, it's like a
Yeah.
partial addition, and you walk out onto the deck.
Yep, doors open out onto the deck, which goes out to the looks out toward the front of the house.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. And I guess now it clarifies things a bit. I guess the plan you were talking about was if they flipped the third floor around to have this set up here, which is currently located at the back, located at the front, then that would preserve, you wouldn't have this thing in front of you. and you'd be
Correct.
able to see
That's
that.
exactly right. But obviously with that eight set offset off the front, that causes issue with his interior space, so we're trying to figure out a middle ground.
And we also suggested as an option for a staircase to do a spiral staircase up to the third story, so then they wouldn't have to do a 10-foot deck.
Mhm.
They would only have to do a 6 or 7-foot deck, so they would lose 5 feet instead of 8 feet interior space as well.
Okay. All right.
I mean, going along with what Zach said, I grew up in the city. I'm from the city. I came back to practice medicine in the city. I was excited to buy my first house in the city. So this comes as a huge setback and a huge detriment to us, since we chose this house based on the location and the value and the future value, the appreciation of the house. So, I mean, we've been trying to work together, but it's just hasn't worked yet. So that's why we wanted to come talk to you today.
Okay. Ma'am?
My name, excuse me, is Sandy Kraus. I live on 1406 Jackson Street on the other side. I saw the sign go up. I did my Googling. I found the application. I got his phone number, and I called and reached out to him and said, can we talk? Because I, too, just moved into the city. I've lived here lifelong in my job. I've been in the city, and I'm so excited to finally be a resident in the city as well. I've worked in the city for 30-some years, and I won't say that too loud. So from my concern, Zach was very sweet. He and his wife and his son came by and visited, and he was very sweet. I talked about the air conditioning unit, and he came up with a solution. I love his contractor. Throughout my house hunting process, I met him before. And I thought that when we talked on Sunday that they were working this out because I knew what their concerns were. But from my perspective, I thought, too, that he was going to be able to sort of bump the whole thing back a little bit. I just, last week, did my final sign-off. I just spent a ton of money on my decks. And I'll show you now with his third floor, which I completely respect the need for space, but I'm going to lose 2 sides of 2 decks now with the third floor. The back deck, I'll lose a third of it. It's already encased in by 1 house, third floor. 2 houses now, I'll just have a little deck and just the opening in the alley. But I can live with that. I totally respect they have a need for more space. But on the front side, his third floor addition will take up 1 whole side of my deck. And I am 8 feet off, so we'll have the length of my deck plus the 8 feet of wall that I'll have on my rooftop deck that I didn't know I was gonna have. And like I said, I just had this built not that long ago. I think the day my contractor left, the white sign went up for his deck. So I'm not sure that I would have spent the money to put the front deck on if I knew that was gonna happen. Again, the back deck doesn't concern me because it's not the money view, but the front part of the deck is. And I thought when we chatted this weekend that he was gonna be able to sort of flip-flop and pull it back. And I don't expect him to accommodate my deck, but just to pull it back a few feet.
It's back.
Yeah, thank you. Unless you need it. Do you need it?
If you want to make it a part of the record.
Okay, sure. I just thought that he was going to be able to keep the same footprint, but tuck it all the way back so that it was in line with the complete rear of his house, his third floor. And then that way it would give him the square footage, pull it back off the front and not impact our view out front like we, thought. So, that's it.
So just some background facts. This is an R8 zoning district, and in R8 zoning districts, as of right, property owners can build to a limit of 35 feet. Here, the property currently 2 stories, proposing to go up to 3. So at, I think, the existing height was like 19 feet, 11 inches. There's about 15 feet there that that a owner would be able to build up to, just simply as of right. As I had disclosed, I live in the area too. I will not tell you where, but you may see me around. And when we built our deck, well, not deck, when we built the addition onto our house, because we'd owned the house for a number of years, our family was expanding. With the time, we had a 2-bedroom house, so we needed another bedroom. So we built up because, you know, in the city you're sort of stuck, particularly when you're living in a real house. The consequence of building up was that my neighbor 3 doors down, who had been there for, he's like a longshoreman, he's been there for like a long time. He had just built a sort of a similar, not really loft deck onto his house, but he had built a rooftop deck onto his house. And, you know, he'd been there, long-time resident, never had the deck before, just got it up, and that's when my contractor just started building. I did have to apologize to him. It's just the way that it went. So you're here to oppose really the 3rd floor addition, when the 3rd floor really is something that can be built as of right. The one aspect which might be questionable is the deck, and that would take a little bit more closer review of where the heights are and where the deck starts and all that. But you don't really have so much of an issue with the 3rd floor deck. You have more of an issue with the 3rd floor addition, because that's the part that's going to really impact you. But that's also the part that he can build as of right.
I say one thing. So we actually don't have a problem with the 3rd floor addition as a whole.
Yes,
Like,
you just would like it moved.
Right, exactly, just shifted. I
That's
mean,
right.
like we.
But what
we
I'm
said he
saying
could
is,
build
please
whatever
go
he
on. Mhm.
wants. Like I completely support developing the city and, you know, expanding houses and making the property value go up of all the houses.
Mhm.
But the location of the 3rd story devalues our house, which we just bought 6 months ago. So it just, you know, is a detriment to us instead of it could be something that really helps us and, you know, brings up the value of our house, but instead it's.
Well, I guess, so there's a couple of points there that that the ability to build to 35-foot height applies to really the whole structure.
Right.
So there's not really a mechanism where this board really could say, well, you can build a 3rd story up to 35 feet, but it has to be shifted this way. That's just sort of an unfortunate truth. One thing that you may want to consider is that, as I said, if it's the one I'm thinking about, I think I know which house you're in. And there's the loft space, as you called it, and then there's the walkout deck. I won't say one of my neighbors because that might tell you where I live, but I have seen it in other places in the neighborhood where people who have a similar sort of situation as that have a spiral staircase that goes up on top of their loft, and then they have a deck on top of that, so they actually wind up with 2 decks, where he only has 1. Actually, he has a second one, but it's in the back. You would have 2 in the front, with the ability to go up to the 3rd story and then regain that view.
Right, and we've considered that, but I mean, that's investing more, you know. money
Well,
and
you know, the great thing about real estate is they're not really building any more of it. And the fortunate thing about the area is that there's, although I guess maybe they could fill in more of the harbor, you could reclaim the land that way. But, you know, the investment choice really is your own. But, you know, I think that you could probably have some confidence in what return you would gain from that. And I don't know how deeply you've looked into it, but you know, spiral staircase is probably going to run you about maybe $3,700, and then the deck is probably going to run you, let's use ballpark figure of 5. So now you're looking around like $8,000 for the deck, and so you know that's sort of your own decision there, whether or not the investment is worth it. But just to sort of
Yeah, we've looked into it.
gratuitous advice there. But really, the main point though is that the height restriction really, as I said, applies to the entire length of the structure. So there's not really a mechanism where the board could really force one to push the structure back. The 8-foot setback requirement, as I'm recalling, is actually a requirement imposed not by the zoning board, but by the planning department as far as their design standards and what they'll approve. And that's for safety reasons, because before people were building up to the edges of decks, you still see them some places, and that just imposes a safety hazard. But that's kind of where that is.
Yeah, and like I said, we were willing to compromise and, you know, lose most of our view and just have a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's not something that, you know, Zach was willing to compromise on, so that's why I wanted to come talk.
And one other thing, I'll say this. We have a neighbor who, our immediate neighbor, has a only a 2-story house, and they have a rooftop deck. And they are between our house, which has a 3rd-story addition, and another house, which has a 3rd-story addition, although the other one isn't a full length. But they have a rooftop deck, and they purchased the house, I guess when they purchased the house, that was the existing condition when they purchased it. And the thing that I've noticed is that of the 3 houses, they get more use out of their rooftop deck than the other 2. So it's not an all is lost kind of scenario. And the fact that they weren't the original purchasers of that house, it was built that way. There was another couple that purchased it, and then they sold it a few years ago to another couple. So someone purchased that knowing that that was the as-is condition. So, you know, it's not, as I said, it's not an all is lost. You know, the value of the investment is gone now because people will still buy it and get significant usage out of it.
Sure. And I don't think that we'll use the deck any less. It's more.
It's a nice amenity to have.
Right, and we're worried about what this change would do to the overall value of the home. So that's obviously why we're here. And yeah, I mean, we're still going to use it.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you? You know, that's why we bought it. But
It's a great setup.
Yeah,
Pretty unusual too.
It is quite unusual. But but thank you for your comments. Really appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Rothrock. But they did certainly lose a lot of money on the house. They had to go through several price reductions. So maybe that's what he's up to there, but
Who knows? Give him the benefit of the doubt. I mean, he testified.
if someone walks through it and says, yeah, it's a single-family house, then
Yeah.
okay.
With 20 phone lines.
And how many cable TV outlets?
Same.
Yeah, that seems odd.
Man likes to party.
But the whole thing has
Yeah.
been 10 years in the making.
Yes.
So somebody should.
It's odd also that it's, because it was the thing I told you, that it's been done sort of in this really slow, creeping kind of way.
Right.
It's, normal construction project, you bang it out and you get done. It doesn't drag on for 10 years. All right.
So I'll keep you informed as to what
It'll
progress.
be interesting to
there
find
is.
out what happened. Okay. Which ones do we want to talk about? All of them.
Right.
You're going to strike a blow for your cardiologist?
Well, oh, what is there to talk about there?
Well, you said all of them. I assume that.
What's Steve's, but, so what's the,
I really had nothing to say about that one.
I didn't have an issue with it.
What are we talking, Caton Avenue?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Okay.
Because the opposition really revolved around the fact that they didn't want.
I'm not convinced
Of our
that the traffic stuff that they've done is adequate at this point.
It may or may not be, but I think that this really falls back onto the same thing that we had on Hartford Road with the other Royal Farms, which is that, you've got two uses, one of which is of right, the other one is conditional. And when the issue is traffic, you're going to get that. So, the convenience store use is an as-of-right use. And so you're going to be generating that traffic to the site just by that alone.
Or would they put the convenience store in without the other component?
Maybe, maybe not, but it's an as-of-right use. And so the question is there anything about it being located here that makes it particularly inappropriate relative to any other place generally in the zone? And the concern just comes down to traffic. In my mind, it's what you're going to get with either use. So it's not, I don't think that traffic alone is what makes it inappropriate.
You good with that one?
Yeah, I didn't have any problems with Caton Avenue.
It helps you.
Follow that all the way up to Pope Francis. Disappointed in St. Agnes with their choice, but I can't vote no based on that.
Probably not. My brother, I guess, didn't disclose that. My brother might be a little bit disappointed to find out that his former high school is being turned into a gas station and a chicken shop.
I've seen many football games here.
Yep.
Yep.
Maybe it's
What's
job
wrong with-
security. They just churn out the cardiovascular disease on that side of the
street.
street.
It's
and
in
across
the
the
street,
street.
yes.
Be their first patient.
All right, so Latin Palace, that's,
Disappointed that they replaced
Right.
Babe Ruth's field with a 60-foot diamond, though, I will say that. That has nothing to do
Do
with
with
my
it, yeah.
decision, but
yeah.
that, that's.
There's a few interesting choices there, but I understand, they've got a lot of different competing uses on the site, and you gotta make space for them all, but.
All the saints are equal. Say that. Agnes is rolling.
Latin Pebble, Broadway, or,
Right.
yes, Latin Palace, Shakespeare,
Proposed to be known.
Broadway. whatever. You know, the longer I listened to the case, the less convinced of it I became. Because I bought the line about you know, wanting to give a operator a opportunity to make something work, but then at what point does that stop? When do you stop adding on certain things? Because you know, there's parking. It is a rather large space, and I think it would be particularly challenging to have that kind of establishment located there because it's a humongous space they have to fill. And I think that that would create pressure, just realistically. I mean, how many 600-seat restaurants are there, like, anywhere? It's a tremendous undertaking, and the cost of it to operate it is just really, really daunting, and it's going to stress the operator
To start
to-
doing what Reba Denario
Yes,
was doing.
yeah.
Because he
we'd be
was
creating an
operating a
enforcement
club
problem.
That's right.
with licensing
So
for a
you-
restaurant, and once they realized he was using it, that he didn't have the proper license to run the club, then
Yeah.
they started pressuring
Pressuring
him.
you, yeah.
And that's probably what's gonna end up happening here.
And why doesn't or I think it doesn't the MOU and the prior decision run with the property?
Well, I think that it does. They're asking us to remove the condition. That was another thing I wanted to
Well, he wants
look
you
at.
to strike down the whole MOU, like
Yeah.
all of the
Right.
conditions.
Yeah. And I wanted to see what the wording was of the order because I'm not entirely sure that that can be accomplished. You know, because we incorporated that into the decision.
Right.
So I don't know that we've got the ability to then reach into it and say, okay, well, and we know that you guys agreed to this, but one person doesn't want to go along with it anymore, and so now it's out.
Did
I
he
don't
have
know.
the right to commit the property, to bind the property the way he did? Do you know that? Because it
Yeah.
sounds like he was a renter and not an owner. Or at least that's what I got from today's hearing.
That's a good question. I don't know. Although the owner would have had to have consented to it. But
That MOU evolved
That was a liquor license
On
issue,
it.
wasn't it?
on a time when live entertainment
When-
was not permitted in the district. It evolved from a former club that existed in the Providence site long before that
Okay.
owner
That
came
tells.
along. And there was live entertainment continuously there under the guise of a banquet hall, meeting hall kind of an arrangement.
Okay.
So,
So it was like a continuing use?
yeah, the live entertainment portion of it was non-conforming, basically. But they came
Okay.
up with the MOU to deal with it, so it could continue.
Gotcha.
And
So then the
then the
agreement
code-
wouldn't apply.
The code then was
Changed.
amended to make live entertainment conditional.
Conditional.
So
Oh.
we could accomplish the same thing with conditions on the property and not have an MOU that
Yes.
is hard to enforce.
Yeah.
But what conditions?
That makes a lot more sense.
That's the problem. What conditions can you do it that makes it a viable business and also a use that, you know, it's a very tough situation.
And that gets to the struggle that I was having with it, is that it's, at what point do you just stop adding on, well, yeah, they don't really have parking, and yeah, it's a really large space, and yeah, there are these issues with live entertainment, and just say, well, maybe that just indicates that that's what makes it inappropriate for this location, is that it's a humongous space that they have to fill. It has no parking. which is another not insignificant thing. It's a 650 person occupancy with 0 parking. That they're proposing to address that with a valet parking plan.
It's not new. I mean, that's
Well,
an issue
true,
the community
but
has
most
had
places,
for decades.
but most places aren't this big.
The parking situation there is grandfathered in, and they weren't cited
No.
parking, so it's part of the conditional use.
Yes.
But the lack of parking has been grandfathered in for years.
Yes.
How do we,
So that's how it's existed all this time without parking.
should we allow this landowner to lease his space? I mean, I agree that what they're proposing is probably not sustainable with their plan, but.
Their plan, they say 600, but their drawing says 500.
Yeah.
Why would people do that?
Well, he did say
You
it would
have a
between.
100 on the
He
dance
said it would
floor.
be between 500 and 600.
100 on the dance floor.
During the hearing, Fogelman did say it would be between 500 and 600.
And they don't show a dance floor.
No, they showed the stage.
And then they have the second floor, which is more, it looks like more than the first floor in terms
Yeah.
of capacity.
I mean, I haven't been in there in years, but as I'm remembering the second floor, it kind of overlooks.
Yeah,
almost
they have
like
like
how Plaza
they
is.
call it a mezzanine, but it's really not.
I don't get how you get a capacity of that much with just a restaurant. Like, those numbers don't.
It's fire rated capacity
been in a
based off
restaurant?
square footage.
Well, that's what I'm saying though, but it's not, and which would be fine for something like a banquet hall or
Yeah.
music, but for butts and seats, you cannot get that many people in that many chairs.
They show 6 top tables on this, and they've got, I think I counted 60-something 6 top tables on the second floor only, according to this thing.
That's not,
And then they've got another hundreds, 125 seats on the first floor, so. Now, little uncommon to have 6 top tables in a restaurant.
Yes.
Being a former server, that's a nightmare.
Of course.
Plus a cash cow.
It's more like banquet seating than restaurant
It's a
seating.
double-edged sword there.
It would work great in Disney World.
In Disney World. Yes, it would.
You never have to worry about a wait.
Can't see down.
No.
Plus, the waiters have to serve food on the second floor, running up and down steps.
They've got a dumb waiter.
Yeah.
That would be great if I saw that into a restaurant.
well,
Yeah.
they're not separate. It's one continuous space.
Not nice.
Lots actually consolidated.
No.
I had a dumbwaiter last time I
It
went out
does,
to eat.
I mean, but to Jay's point, what do you do with this property? Right?
Apparently it's been that way.
Look, like
Cover it up
everything
and
else
turn
in
it into
Baltimore,
what?
it'd become apartments.
Another condition, we will consolidate the lots.
And the other problem is, if they can't meet the definition of a restaurant, there's an enforcement component that apparently hasn't been there. There's no will to try to enforce it. But it would really have to be enforced if the community would expect it to be enforced, and that's a major problem, I think.
Yeah, when it turns into all the kind of problems that existed in the previous business,
Mm-hmm.
the community says, see, I told you so.
Yeah.
So it's,
I think we just will be punting to enforcement.
I don't know if there's a way, well, there's no way to give them a portion of the building,
How much money they spent over there already?
like first floor only?
50.
Supposedly 50,000.
To
50 with 450 to go was the
see
testimony.
if they can, I don't know, prove that it works. But
I just don't think that it works there.
yeah,
It's just too large of a space.
it's a neat idea to have it look like a Shakespearean theater.
I mean, the other thing I was troubled by was the testimony was clear that they're gonna try anything and everything to generate revenue.
That's right. Well, because they have to.
Right, and so they're gonna have rock concerts, every kind of concert,
Right.
and they emphasize that more than selling food.
Mm-hmm.
So, to me, it was, this is gonna, it's gonna be, Ram's Head.
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly the image I had in mind.
Right.
Ram's Head on Broadway, and that's not a restaurant.
No.
I understand why parking is grandfathered in, but is there a point in which that grandfathering lapses? I mean, the space hasn't been used in quite a long time, so is there a point at which you can no longer say,
Well, I think
big
that
grandfather?
that would be up to the board to make that call. There's really no evidence for us to,
Right.
Sure.
but I would think yes, the answer to that is yes. How
Well, when
long?
did, what's his name, stop operating it?
I don't know. I don't know if it's been dormant entirely. So we don't have that history to make that kind of a decision yet.
What about the other one?
Which other one?
Thames Street.
Oh,
I think,
The only way that, in my mind, it could even possibly work is if there was a condition that that they had to be served
Food with alcohol?
food.
No alcohol without food.
Yes.
They were amenable to it.
Reluctantly, but
Reluctantly.
You enforce that.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, some people don't like oysters, but they want to sit there and watch their partner eat oysters.
That would be
Speaking from experience, Dave.
I didn't quite
Right.
understand what was so bad about having them bring the alcohol in from inside.
Nothing.
right. I mean, they've been
So
doing it for
Let's, yeah.
20 years.
Yeah,
with
you sit at the
flag
oyster bar, you
meat.
order half a dozen or a dozen oysters, and you get your beer brought to you from inside. And then you're in compliance.
Yes.
I think if we limit it to an oyster bar, instead of just an outdoor bar,
They won't do it.
they may still.
I'm with Marty.
Suppose they bring out a tub
think it's-
with ice, with beer and bottles of beer and a tub of
Like a
ice
bucket.
temporarily. So a lot of them do that, like when they have a crowd.
Buckets of
And
beer.
we're not gonna have an inspector there to watch them every day, but
I'll
it is
volunteer.
a tough thing to enforce.
Right.
And I think it would only become an enforcement issue if it became a nuisance to the neighbors.
Well, and the precedent is a concern too.
Yes,
That's
that's
the
Right.
biggest concern.
Yes, to me, that is.
Yeah.
And that's why I was saying I agree with Marty. I think that I don't really see a problem with just having service of food. You can have your oysters, whatever, shucked out there, and then you just have your drinks brought out to you. I don't really see a need to be selling alcohol from that front space because it will certainly lead to people saying this is what the precedent's been set, and they're gonna want a similar kind of operation. And the concern is that and what happens once it gets changed over, as it invariably will at some point.
Before we
start, just remind me of the threshold for the accessory use
It's conditional
or
use.
conditional use.
It has to be, something about locating it at that, there has to be some sort of adverse effect that occurs by locating it at that location that wouldn't occur just if you located it somewhere else.
I got it. Good. That traffic is a nightmare.
Sure, like I said, I, went down, remember it was, traffic always zooms off of that. Now, I will say that it's particularly good that they're restoring the speed cameras, because once you had those, I mean, it only, what?
I don't think
They're accurate.
Well, yeah, whether they worked or not, I do recall having to rush over there to pick her up before, daycare closed, and then, it
Get a
a
picture
couple
of your
weeks
car in the
later,
mail.
you get, tickets, so.
Wonder why you remembered that so vividly.
And I knew you were going 75 miles an hour on Caton Avenue, didn't you?
It wasn't to get a chicken box.
No, no.
All right. What about
Woodburn?
Jackson Street?
Threshold 3 to 1.
Woodburn and Jackson Street, yeah. I was okay
Woodburn,
with Woodburn.
yes, yes. Just need to remember it's revised to 8 antennas.
I was okay with Jackson
3 to 1,
Street, too.
Oh, Jackson. Yeah, I was okay with that.
I think that's correct, yes. All right, are we ready?
Yep.
Oh, that's right, and Rogers postponed, let me write that down. Okay, starting from the top, 2016-455, 901 South Caton Avenue, I'm a yes.
Yes.
Agree.
I'm a no.
Yes, with planning conditions. Who are you gonna tell about that, Pope Francis or your cardiologist?
Going to confession.
I'll just have a sandwich when you go in.
2000.
But I'm not gonna drive that way to try to get anywhere down there.
Have a salad for dinner
I go to
tonight.
Wilkins Skating all the time, and that's a nightmare.
2017-47, 509 through 513 South Broadway.
I'm a no.
I'm a no.
I'm a no.
No.
2017-56, 3400 Mueller Street was by consent. 2017-67, 7129 Hartford Road was withdrawn. 2017-70, 1606 Thames Street. I am a yes, except the limit on the outdoor bar to service of food only, no alcohol.
Can go with that. I'm okay with that. As long as we, yeah.
So that means
Well,
carry
if it's
the
written
alcohol
to-
inside. from
Alcohol
outside.
by wait staff only.
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
right. Alcohol
That
by
they
weight.
can't serve alcohol from the bar.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, yes.
I think
What he said.
we're setting up an enforcement nightmare doing that.
Doing what?
But they're already allowed to have outdoor table
Table
service.
service.
Right.
And they have
But the
outdoor. Right.
oyster bar,
It's
that's
only,
really gonna be a bar?
well, I mean, I think that they're allowed to have, I mean, if there's going to be someone who they're ordering food from, wouldn't they be allowed to do that as of right?
Then it really wouldn't be a bar.
Well, however you're gonna term it, I just see it as the, you've got a person, whether you call that person wait staff or you call them a shucker or whatever, and there's gonna be a table and there's gonna be people seating around it and they're gonna be served, they're gonna order and be served food at that table.
See, I think it's, and we probably should have asked, but I think it's really gonna be like a bar setup.
It is. is.
where there are gonna be stools at a bar with a
Yeah.
shucker behind the bar.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Right, and so,
With the shucker and the bartender.
Shuckers and shots.
well, they're proposing shucker and bartender. We're saying you can have a shucker and you have to get your drinks from inside, served to you by waitstaff.
You can have a shucker, just not a shot.
So what's the difference between waitstaff and a bartender?
Well, because.
bartender is
No,
at
well,
the
the
shucker
bartender would
bar.
have would have the bottles right behind right next to the oysters.
Yeah.
That's what they're proposing, to have,
I know.
you know, taps and bottles and everything
Mm-hmm.
right there next to the oyster shucker. And we're saying, no, that's an outdoor bar.
Mm-hmm.
So we're saying you can have outdoor oysters, but you can have your alcohol brought to you from inside.
And in my mind, I think that they can do the service of the oyster part as part of that's just outdoor table service.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that. I think that the way they've worded it and the way that we are
Okay, well, if
about to
if your
fashion a
issue
response
is
is going
just
to-
simply terminology, if you want to term it as, shucking station or oyster service at table or however it is, I see it as there's a drawing that shows, I can find it here somewhere.
Yeah, they have a.
How do we make it clear to them that we don't consider having a bartender behind the shucking station the same as being served alcohol by waitstaff? That's my concern. Because it's still a staff person at the restaurant, and the bartender could also be a waiter. Sometimes they're interchangeable. I just want to make sure that we don't give them the thumbs up for something that they take a little farther than what we intended.
Yeah, well, I think that's just in wordsmithing
Yeah.
the opinion.
Yeah.
How's Purple Patio get away with the whole no outdoor bar?
I don't know.
Don't ask questions. So that's this is it right here?
That's it.
Okay, so
See, the eyes
This
are on the
is-
wall. Only the shucker's gonna have eyes on the street.
yeah,
Because the customers are gonna be facing the wall.
facing wall, yeah.
Right.
So you're gonna have all these people who are gonna be seated here,
Mm-hmm.
and you're gonna have one person behind there serving food.
And then there's a door behind the bar, which goes
Mhm.
into
Which leads into the venue.
the main restaurant.
Yeah.
Me either.
So I just don't see a way, I think that we can certainly be careful on the wording of it to make it explicitly clear what's going on, but I don't see a way to delineate based upon that setup, that there's anything different as far as service of food outside of the restaurant. That's what that is. They're all seated, they're at a table, there's somebody who's bringing all those people food. I think that part they can do as part of their outdoor table service. So
I agree.
maybe we just don't use the word bar. And you can have it as
Seafood station.
Can we say, an outdoor oyster bar without beverage service served from the bar? I don't know if that's clear enough.
Outdoor bar that's not a bar.
Right.
How about this?
Food service station only.
Okay.
Derek, take, I guess, the first crack at the language and then just bring it to if it's ready by the next thing. You can bring it or just email it out and then we can all look at it.
Yeah,
Not alcoholic.
makes sense.
Wait, let us see what we can come up. See if everybody,
Because I think your point is,
we can edit it before we publish it.
yeah. And that also had I guess, planning department conditions on the outdoor, on the outdoor table service.
Oh, yeah.
Probably what's already in.
Yeah, they're already
Yeah.
there.
Okay. Well,
2017-71, 2075 through 2085 Woodbourne Avenue. I'm a yes, as amended to 8 antennas and equipment.
Agreed.
yes.
With planning department conditions, yes.
Yes.
2017-98, 318 Kernway. That's right, he did not appear. 2017-99, 2832 O'Donnell Street, was by consent with planning department conditions. 2017-100, 317 South Broadway, was by consent with planning department conditions. 2017-101, 17 North Chester Street was postponed until May 9th. 2017-102, 800 South Streeper Street was by consent. 2017-103, 1819 Covington Street was by consent. 2017-104, 1408 Jackson Street, I'm a yes.
Yes.
Agreed, yes.
2017-108, 4103 North Rogers Avenue was postponed. 2017-110, 5101 through 5103 York Road was postponed. And 2017-111, 1602 Jackson Street was by consent.